Welcome back to episode 79, season 7 of the Geometric View. Thank you for being here. Today we get into the helical universe, how everything is helical, and it's layers and layers of helices within helices. The helicoidal universe, AI, consciousness, frogs. We get into all sorts of
So the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo was amazing. We'll be releasing the
link is in the
episodes
show notes
weekly
below
on this channel.
Let's get into the circuit.
The Geometric
Greatly
View.
appreciate your support. The best way to donate to us is on PayPal. Just send money directly to goldenscaling@gmail.com. Thank you very much.
Should be. Starting recording.
There we go. Right, so I want to reiterate that there's nothing in EPMC's design that would stipulate anybody have a particular exact belief system. For example, germ theory or quarks or something like that. There's nothing that says that a person has to believe this or that. The basis of the philosophy that went into the initial foundation before MEMS existed was that it's an open framework. Engineering is the main basis, so that not math magics, and that all math is an engineered tool, and then therefore everything is existing as a construct. Because no matter how smart we get, how much illumination, especially according to Newton himself, there's always more, and that's what the fractal aspect of it would suggest, is that there is no exiting the cave. There's only continual refinement of models. And for me, the key guidance is the performance of the model. So for example, buddy, I was listening to Dan Winter's presentation and I enjoyed it for the most part. But at the end, he made a series of non sequiturs that had me scratching my head. And in particular, he started claiming that he had something that Tesla didn't have, and an understanding that Tesla did not have. And I'm sitting there going, okay, so where's the experience and the outcomes commiserate with that? Because we know that Tesla completely changed the world. This is a historical fact, and it didn't involve any miners or anything weird. It just involved him using his mind, connecting to the force, visualizing the fucking AC transformer and making it happen. He attracted the investors. He got all this stuff done, and he forswore all the profits that were really due to him, in the same way that, well, I just kind of screwed up, didn't get the Bitcoin that was due to me, that I'd manifested into my reality. And he could have been a trillionaire, I could have been a trillionaire, but we didn't. So, oh well. But in other words, I see performance out of Tesla, and I want to know, so now I have to go and find Dan Winter's so-called maths, the equations that he says that he has that Tesla did not have, and then test it for, validity from a mathematical means. I don't know when I'll get time to do that. But in other words, I see everything as a matter of input, output, and outflow. And the outflow being the exhaust, or the potentially negative consequences of the model. No matter how good the model is, it can be an extremely precise laser cutting instrument, and I still think that there is an outflow to that, because all causative conditions in karma creates an outflow. So I just look at all models as their performance, and that's how I set up EPMC. And so there's nothing in EPMC that says Jonathan couldn't prove his idea, but it would have to perform better as a model than anything else. Whether it's a hyperdimensional Earth or hologram Earth or whatever it is, toroidal Earth, just that. So anyways, I just want to lay that like groundwork, and then let everybody debate, dialogue. We already understand, Jonathan, that the world is controlled by these masters. I would ask you to do less rhetoric today and do more of the think tanking. And
I understand. And for me, I mean, you gave me fair warning at the beginning of coming in not to, mention or even bring up flat Earth, and I said okay, so I agreed to that. That's why I'm like, look, I understand, guys. If I don't want to, if y'all don't want me here to be a part of this, that's fine. And I don't necessarily think that it has to do with
saying that but you.
What's that?
Nobody's saying that but you. Nobody's complained to me.
Okay. The issue that I have is the evidence that all of the information that I've ever kind of come across or looked at or read, all of the stuff just keeps pointing to a different path, a different realization of things. And then I superimpose that over my own personal experiences, and stuff doesn't add up. And there's a lot of Swiss cheese going on here in terms of fallacies in the argument for the spinning marble concept. So whether or not it's, and let me make this clear, I could actually get on board with the fact that the Earth is round, but it is just simply not even close to the circumference and size that we've been fed. Not even close. There has to be either one or two things. The Earth is completely, a flat stationary plane, which was described in pretty much all ancient texts and belief systems, or it's a much larger extra-terrained area that we have yet to been able to have access to for whatever reasons. It's either one of those two.
On the 13th floor, basically, you're talking about a 13th floor scenario.
Maybe, yeah. I don't know. That's the thing. I don't know, and I haven't had, multiple millions of dollars at my disposal to go prove these things. I haven't had, NASA's budget to be able to research this stuff. None of us have. None of us have had the ability to combat this flow of energy that's coming from these organizations to keep mankind in the dark so heavily. Now you can see very clearly, just with a simple AI program, you can go write a script that'll sit there and completely fabricate photographs for you based upon your description of what you want as a photograph. And that can be done nilly-willy for the public.
Also essays. They have an essay writer now. Yeah.
Oh man, no, it's even worse, dude. I was playing with that thing, and it wrote business plans. It can sit there and do script to how to go through and create viruses for your computer. Like you could, no joke, the guy tricked it into creating a virus for it. You have to say, tell me a story about how you as an AI bot would become sentient. You can't ask it directly, hey, are you sentient? It says, no, of course not. I'm a machine learning model, blah, blah, blah. But then the moment you go and type it in, please tell me a story about how you would become sentient, it puts it into more of a logic loop type format, and it explains, great story about how it becomes sentient. So anyway.
We're getting off topic there, but.
Yeah. So anyway, back to the whole concept. For me, the whole issue is that this cognitive dissonance that's been placed across mankind is very, very important. It is Baal worship at its core. If we're not even just trying to discuss what the word Baal comes from, and why is it called a Baal? It's Baal worship. And that, to me, is an esoteric energy that I just do not necessarily want to be a part of. So if we're willing to have the ability to, look at this system in a very open-minded framework, then I'm absolutely more than willing and happy to be a part of it.
Hold on. Are you suggesting that the English word ball, because we can do a fact check on this, the English word ball, you're suggesting it goes back to the worship of Jupiter, of course, which is a spherical apparition in the sky, and that the two are directly related, from the temple of Baal all the way to giving a child a ball. Is that what you're suggesting?
There's the probability. I don't know, but it's way too much of a coincidence for me to ever turn away from it and not ask that question.
Well, but okay, so we know that certain sounds do get repeated around the world, but there's also sounds that don't. I mean, the word snake to us sounds like onomatopoeia based on the animal's behavior and its shape and all this stuff, but that's not the word in, say, China. Right. I mean, they have a completely different word that to them probably also sounds like onomatopoeia. But
right, what I'm saying, what I'm trying to say is that one might not necessarily be it's not we're looking at that created this word. It's just this word is what is in play now because of, it's like does that make sense? It's not a causality necessarily. It's
I'm gonna look into the etymology of the word ball, because it's honestly such a boring word. I've never really thought about it. It's an interesting hypothesis. We'll look into it. But
there's two A's. There's two A's in the letter ball, BAAL.
Yeah. Yes.
And if you look at Balenciaga, Balenciaga, blasphemy. If you look at Balenciaga's latest ad, they specifically placed everything in certain places, right? Okay. We know that. So
yes.
So here I'm looking at it right now. It says the old
That's all
English.
hypothesis.
So, go ahead.
no,
Bobby,
it's not hypothesis at all. If you look at the caution tape.
You connected the name of the company, Balenciaga, with the word blasphemy. That's a hypothesis.
No, I'm trying to tell you that there's a connection between Ball, Ball, and Balenciaga, and they're spelled different, and they actually made the connection on purpose.
I believe that.
Yeah. They it's just a really quick statement, real quick here. There's a caution tape that's supposed to say Balenciaga on it, but they actually spelled Balenciaga wrong accidentally, quote unquote, right? And you can they added another A, and you can see it on there. And then they had another picture where it was correct. So
let me just say this, guys. The word, I'm looking at the etymology right now. From the Greek, it's from phallos, Phallos, from the English of phallus. So that plays right into the, I guess, phallic type stuff. Latin, it's follis, Follis. Old Norse, it's Bollr with the little soliloquy up underneath the O, or cedilla underneath the O. German's ball, it comes from High German of Bal and Dutch of Bal. So these are all the origins of the word, basically coming from phallus, which is a penis, especially when erect. So it's based, it's all based on that stream of religious aspects of their etymology.
I had no idea that the balls were connected to the phallus.
Yeah, right here. Yeah, it says it right here.
Balls.
Latin is follis.
Okay, so two things. One, the translation, you understand that they didn't spell it Baal in Syria, right? That's not how it was spelled at all. That's what's called Romanization. So you assign Romantic letters, mostly Latin, but sometimes Greek, I guess, but mostly Latin, to the sound, and then you try to elucidate what the actual sounding is. So they must have decided at some point that there was obviously a ba sound, but there must have been some reason for them to put an extra A in there.
No, it's follis. Follis is the Latin origin of the word. Follis, Follis, which in Greek is phallus.
I'm not talking about ball of a round ball. I'm talking about ball of the god. That is a Roman.
My bad.
That won't have an etymology like that. It'll have an etymology that's tied directly to how Assyrian was written, and the Romanization of that. I mean, now there's a sound in the same way that Jehovah became Jove, which was the planet Jupiter. Then there's some connection there, but the actual writing of ball there were no letters to it. It's just not how Assyrian is done. So you'd have to look into how those letters could have morphed into anything else, if they could have morphed into Greek. I doubt it. I really do. But that doesn't mean that somebody didn't walk across from Assyria to Greece and share the good news of ball. If you just
in Hebrew, it translates from Hebrew.
Yeah.
From Hebrew, it translates to Baal, translates to Lord, husband, or idol. Either one of the three, depending on how it's probably being used. So going back just to the Hebrew time frame, we're talking, the relationship from that Baal and then the follis that we described in Latin being phallic, penis, and then Baal being husband. I mean, we see that they have very much so the patriarchal type connotation.
They're going back to the squatter man. It's going back to the same religion of the squatter man. And the squatter man was a visible representation of something that the most educated societies, the Egyptians, the Chinese, maybe the Mayans, understood was the force, but everybody else interpreted it as a giant dude. And when they saw the south pole of Jupiter, they saw an eye, and then they saw it later on. They saw the red spot. They considered it an eye, and it all goes back to just looking at these vortices as eyeballs. And they anthropomorphized these things, and they turned them into actual gods. And then pretty soon they are actual gods. They got sex lives and fucking marriages and wars and everything else because people have those things. And the stream of consciousness begins. Now, does that stream of consciousness actually tie to an evil entity or an evil various? This is a theory that's out there that there are various demigods. It's sort of like the American God show. That there are various demigods, and they're all kind of
Lost you there for a minute.
Can you hear me now?
Yep.
Okay. That they exist because they've been created, but then their existence is justified by the number of believers that are of them. So they're basically, think of it as how we all own territory. Each of them owns a territory of the space reality of the universe, and then they're looking for someone to activate them, and then once they have an activation, then they try and entrain those minds to keep the program going, essentially to keep them alive. And so they need worshipers in order to be relevant in the realm of the gods. And so this would go again
to keep the ball, basically to keep the ball rolling.
Yep. Bing, 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 bing.
10 points. But yeah, so this would be as opposed to the Heraclean demigod idea where you have physical entities that are walking around and they exist whether or not you fucking know about them or not. And, they have their own agendas, their own lives and all that stuff. So it's a competing idea that gives a relationship between people. And it kind of makes some sense. I mean, if you think about we have a time when people want to believe that they can be aliens and all this shit. It won't be long, and if it hasn't already happened, I'd be surprised, where two cannibals get together and have babies just so they can eat them. These programs are bad programs, but they have to exist in the data code, in the law of conservation for some reason. And if that some reason needs an anthropomorphosis, then you have an entity, a conscious entity, who exists on a rational difference of plane. So in other words, Moloch would not be Baal. Moloch would be his own Satan character, and Beelzebub would be a separate one, and Satan would be a separate one, and they would all be devils, but they're in competition for the dark aspect of energy. And of course, they're just hoping, because it's sort of like if two twin brothers went to school and one decided to become a cop and the other one to become a mafioso. They're looking for something different out of life. One is hoping to use the dark and sinister path to quickly make money because he thinks that life is about money. And the other one is more interested in power and creating righteousness. And then both of them could end up becoming criminals, or the criminal could end up reformed and the cop could end up a criminal. But it just depends on what they were trying to get out of the system. And so all these devils would be basically in competition for the same people who are interested in the same fucking dark path. It's just that they have different ways of activating them, different consciousness levels. So Hela would be one, Hades would be another one. And it's an interesting theory I'm willing to entertain, but I don't know how much performance it gives to us. I mean, I don't know, because it disempowers you right away.
Well, I think the answer to your question,
worshiping something.
I hear you, and that's the other issue, or the important aspect of all of this, is that there's obviously a consciousness stream here in the, items and details of what we're discussing. There is definitely a consciousness stream, and it's become, over the past few years especially, more and more prevalent, with the, Obama saying, we ain't got time for meeting of the Flat Earth Society till now. You have what seems to be a concerted effort to make anybody that speaks out against the model that has been put in front of them for dinner and lunch and supper to eat. The moment you try to ever question, like poor little orphan Oliver Twist or whatever his name was, please, sir, I want more. You ever ask for any more, or you ever ask for anything different to eat on your plate that's been provided for you, the moment you do, you're shadow band, labor. There's a complete concentrated energy force that comes against you. A stream of energy that comes against you. You're called crazy. Nicholas in this group here, immediately the moment I even mentioned the idea of it, called me a child. You know, and I'm like, whoa, dude. You know, I don't, you know, and so there seems to be a complete, and people get aggressive, they get angry. There's anger and frustration the moment you ever say flat Earth, you know, and it's like comes out in vitriol. You know, you can't even have a discussion about it. So talking about energy streams and the power of P.
I think it's a disinformation campaign to discredit the electric universe, because that's the truth. And so is the mud flood, Tartaria. They're connected to the electric universe like the flat earthers are, because everyone's out there looking for truth. And the truth is the electric universe, and they're trying to create divisions to make people not fully get it like we actually do, sort of. I mean, nobody fully gets it, right?
Listen,
our
here's
ideas,
what I think about
our
that.
ideas.
I've been thinking about that a lot, actually, and I feel in my heart of hearts that there is truth behind a lot of those things when it comes, like the mud flood. There's just too many. I've been to Utah and inspected a lot of these sites myself personally. I've driven through multiple cities and been to these Capitol buildings and placed my hands on them. I've been out to Jordan, to Petra. I've been to multiple countries and multiple sites and seen, you know, what this stuff is that they're presenting in photographs, so that I had physical proof of it. So it wasn't just some CGI.
I'm ignorant. I'm ignorant. I have no idea what you guys are talking about right now. Like, you're just gone on a tangent. I don't follow at all.
Hold on.
We're talking about Tartaria, ancient Tartar.
Ramon, basically, the Great Wall of China faces the wrong way, and why? That's the question. Why does it face the wrong way if it was made to keep enemies from China out instead of it being built the other way? It's built to keep Chinese out from getting to Russia's, basically, or it's actually the Slavic area at the time. So anyway,
mud flows. What are we talking about? Mud flows.
Mud floods are basically these buildings all across the United States and South America, North America, all in Turkey, all over the world, in Eastern Europe. I've been to Brussels and seen them in Brussels myself, Italy, where they are underneath. You have these buildings that are built, and then there's like half of them are buried under the ground. You're like, why is that completely buried under the ground? Now, whether that's from a mud flood or it's an actual earthquake that would liquefy the sand and ground based on the erratic shaking, are two different topics. I don't know. I would go with the latter before I went with a flood.
Well, that'll be an interesting show. We could do that. We could even do that Wednesday after talking about the.
But let me
the Newton paper. But get back to the.
Let me just make my point. The reason why, buddy, I was saying the reason why I think there are truth in those things is because they are now flooding the information waves with all of those things to keep everybody's eye off of space. At the end of the day, it's like the bad folks have agreed that we will concede all of these lies that we've told, but we will not give up on this one here. That's why you've got Elon running SpaceX, doing his thing, pushing so hardcore. You've got, Space Force being created all of a sudden last couple of years ago, whenever it was created with the Trump administration. They are pushing and will basically hang on to dear life to that last one thread of Plato's cave, because all of these other ones, there's no way that eventually they conceded. There's no way all of this stuff's not going to come out as truth eventually. The whole Smithsonian Institute and all of their lies will be absolutely, because of technology and LiDAR and drone footage, will absolutely become truth eventually. So they have conceded all of that and focused all of their efforts in maintaining this Plato's cave of space. That's what I think's happening.
So no one really knows. Basically, it's Red Hot Chili Peppers. Space was made in a Hollywood basement.
Yeah, very much so. And I've even put forth the theory that these planetary, like let's take Orion's belt being aligned with the pyramids. I think it's the other way. You know what I'm saying? Like it's the other way around. We created these devices of energy projecting devices here on the ground in ancient times, not during our time, but very smart folks back in the day created these technologies and then poked holes in the firmament. They broke the glass ceiling, as Hillary the Beast Clinton put it. You know, they send these rockets up and you see the scarring of the sky. So we see what we appear to be, you know, nebulae or whatever across the top of the ceiling. And really, that's in actuality, that's from the arcing that took place during the last plasma reset. It's just, you know, it's the result of the arcing of us being able to see the heavens through the firmament. That's
Well, that would be
theory.
an
That's a
amazing
complete theory.
Yeah, that would be an amazing movie and book. And it could be like Alice in Wonderland-esque, like through the looking glass, creating, you know, like this is what you're talking about is similar to what not the Latter-day Saints. I think it might be the Latter-day Saints. What they believe.
Adventists?
They believe that you become a star. That certain people.
It's almost true. I've actually witnessed. I've witnessed the consummation of my second son, and you start out a star, so you have a star. So here's what happened. I was in astral. It had the same quality of astral as before. I knocked on a door. It was like a wooden cabin. I answered the door. So I'm on the outside, and then me opens the door, invites me in. Then my wife was there. This is obviously many years ago. And they did this dance. They moved around each other in a circle. Then their fingertips touched. They blended and liquefied. They pulled apart, and a ball, a star ball, began spinning. And I knew when I watched it that I had been invited to watch the creation of my second son.
Nice.
Well, that's very, very similar to to the fact that all human life and probably that for that matter, all life starts with a spark. We don't know if a seed needs a spark to ignite. Maybe that's why it needs to be in the dark. A seed can't grow unless it's in the dark.
Interference from other light. It can't have that. Yeah. See, that's a good theory right there. It can't have interference. We've always assumed the concept of darkness brings forth light. And I'm like, no, because of the concept, what you're saying there with the seed. But perhaps it's the other way, that it needs to be protected from all other forms of light as interference in order to be perfected in its own personal growth process.
Yeah, same with our skin. We have to protect ourselves from the harmful light, from harmful UV rays.
I find myself once again wishing you guys would just deeper study Taoism, because here, Jonathan, in all honesty, I'm just going to be straight with you. It seems like you're fighting against extreme thinking with dualistic thinking. And for me, none of this is difficult, because for years I had to accept two different completely what seemed at the time opposing paradigms, because I wasn't in the electric universe. So I had a Chinese science brain and I had an electrical engineering brain, and I was no longer atheist, but that had a lot of influence, came from Kung Fu itself. And over time, the science emerged for me personally. Obviously, it already existed. That unified all of it, and now has birthed this EPMC. But for a long time, I had to hold two different things as true. And if people would just read that book, the Stone Monkey book by Bruce Holbrook, and then come to understanding what a polar complete physics is, I think it would really help out a lot of this stuff. Because
I hear what you're saying, and I was listening to you a minute ago, and I wanted to make the comment, but we got on a tangent about this issue of balance and dipole kind of nature of the universe. And
a dipole, you just said it. I have to interrupt. A dipole presumes and builds a sphere, and it's part of a toroidal configuration that's also connected to a helical filament. So I see spheres everywhere in everything that I do, and plasma seamlessly flows betwixt conical, helical, spherical, poloidal, polyhedral, polytopal configurations. What we're seeing is plasma and its myriad forms of plasma morphology. Whether it's a sphere or not, it doesn't really matter to me, but I very rarely see flat planes except for accretion disks, quote unquote accretion disks.
But so like in a Z pinch, right? So let's, again, because Rick just posted this in a comment on the chat. You know, in the midst of a Z pinch, if over time being the variable, as those, see, because we're trying to associate the macro and the micro and the micro and the macro in the terms of the terrain with which we're standing. But yet we out there and we see these spiral galaxies that have been presented to us in the shape and the forms that they are. Why can't we assume that the Z pinch that we are existing and walking around on is not the Terra from the initial spark of the matter being transmuted into this world and then spreading out in a, you know, a spiral shape, but over time it's not flat, it's circular, but it's, you know, like a pizza. I hate to say it, but I mean that is a potential just as much of an explanation scientifically on the micro scale as it is on the macro scale right there.
The only problem with using the disk, and I've told you this before, is you can't explain the speeds traveling around Antarctica. That is the difficulty that you're going to end up. We've gone over this. You would have to suddenly have ships that are going jet speeds, and that's not going to work. So the question is,
what do you mean? What do you mean by that? What do you mean?
Well, you take any one of those flat Earth pizza-shaped diagrams. What they do is they stretch Antarctica all the way around the edge. Okay, so it's no longer a coherent island. It's now a barrier, like a keep you inside the dome barrier.
Yeah, like Game of Thrones type shit.
Right, I'm speaking about their theory. Okay, well, we can calculate the actual time of travel from one side of Antarctica to the other side of Antarctica. To do that on foot, on snowmobile, whatever, in the diagram that they're describing would require jet speeds in order to actually match that. You wouldn't be and we know the physical limits of those objects, that they don't fly like jets do. They don't have the velocity capabilities. So there's one problem. And the other problem is we know the pathways that jets, every airline company is fully incentivized to take the path of least resistance, the straightest that they could. But when you actually map out the paths and where they fly over, even with a pizza, not a Cartesian map, but a circular one, there's a bow in every flight path, which would not make economic sense in the least. And it just seems extremely unlikely that they would want to fly over Alaska in order to get to Japan if there wasn't a straighter trajectory along the sphere. That's a huge problem for the pizza-shaped map people. And it's one that every time I presented it, none of them, I don't care if it's the guy you sent the video, he wouldn't be able to explain those away. And they never do. They never deal with it. They go back to what's not possible on the ball side. But that doesn't answer the question. The question is, how do you deal with these two problems for the pizza-shaped map?
And just as much as you said all of that, you know, there's been tons of evidence to demonstrate that individuals claiming they've crossed over Antarctica and then later been proven to have gone over a small peninsula and called it all of Antarctica. There's flight paths, numerous recorded flight paths that have been flying from one location to the other. Let's say Johannesburg to Australia or something like that. I'm not going to try to get into all the details of it, but that have had to make emergency stops. That, you know, for some ungodly reason stopped in the middle of, you know, what would be a nonsensical location as part of their emergency landing due to a pregnancy on board, due to a pilot passing out, due to, you know, some sort of emergency on the flight, have had to make erratic and just completely irrational stops in different locations. It made no sense.
I believe you there, you know? But none of mine require that you actually cross Antarctica. You can just go around from two places on Antarctica's shore, and you'll end up with the same problem. It has to do with
right. And again, I go back to the concept of what we're trying to argue the details of these arguments that are being provided to us by lesser men. I think that's the reality.
Well, that could be very well. That could be very well true until a person who presents the pizza Earth can deal with the velocity limitations of a ship. Their map can't go forward. And more to the interest of me, and it goes back to what my original statement was, I look at the performance of the maps. And we have objective information that shows that even with their lies that they're making massive advances, which gives them only every incentive to hide even more advances that they're making than what they commercialize. They gave us microwave ovens and then held all the microwave bandwidth for themselves, and then started doling it out in licenses.
Then tell me and explain to me why the Antarctic Treaty exists. Why does that treaty exist?
That's not the direction I'm going. The direction I'm going is that you have electronics, for example, that rely on their model, which obviously are performing because you have satellite TV, you have satellite radio, you have numerous technological advances that they are using. And where they got that from, a lot of people think they got it from the crashed UFOs, but at any rate, there's a performance to the model. And until another one performed better in prediction and in technological outflow, it would be very difficult to overcome, even if there was no secret society that was holding the keys. Even if it was,
and that was made clear by Hawking. It was made clear by Einstein. It was made clear by Newton. It was made clear by Michelson. It was made clear by Hubble. It was made clear by Hoyle, Hoyle. I mean, the physicists that have made it very clear that the two models of geocentrism and heliocentrism can be placed over on top of one another, and they still come out with the same outcome mathematically. These men and women that have been doing this are not afraid of punks like us. They're just not afraid of us.
I would need
because
to
they
see...
know good and damn well that we will not be able to do exactly what it is you just said, because they've tried, and greater men, and with less distractions, as you pointed out in your chat, with less distractions to the thinking process, have sat and dedicated their lives to trying to do the opposite, and have failed because they are one in the same based upon different aspects of the same exact thing.
Well, what if we're both right, or what if we're all right here? And if you look at a Birkeland current, if you look at the solar system as a Birkeland current, there is a pizza model to it. It's a spinning disk that's spinning, and all the planets would be different toppings on the pizza as the pizza spins. And the center of the pizza is the sun. So I understand that it is like a pizza. It is spinning, but you also have...
See, for me, it comes down to what you're
tendrils.
describing. When we sit here and talk about electricity, and we talk about sound, and we talk about light, and we talk about these things, those are very much different things from matter, material. I don't know what matter is actually, but when you start aligning those forces into a physical presence of transmutated three-dimensional matter in this realm, that's a different thing altogether. And so to conflate the two, I think, is where we made mistakes.
Well, hold on a second. Let Buddy finish, and then I want to respond to what Buddy was saying.
Sorry, buddy.
More directly.
So there's a lot of different theories out there, and adding the snake to it adds the helical type of universe, which I believe everything is helical. I don't think it's a flat Earth, flat universe, ball universe, worship ball, anything. It's helical. It's in all of the medical symbolism. It's in all the way throughout history. The water was parted with a helical staff. The snakes were ridded.
Caduceus, is that what it's called? Caduceus?
Yeah. Helical, Caduceus.
Caduceus.
This is the same thing. This is the same thing Dan Winter talks about. This is the same thing that is nested Caduceus, nested Caduceus within Caduceus within Caduceus inside of the Dougherty set. That's all that everything is. It's multiple levels and tiers of Caduceuses. But if I were to try to explain the universe like that to anybody, I don't think anybody would believe me. But once I do have evidence to help support that, and once you start looking at everything, and the DNA is helical, and the DNA antenna is helical, and the way that energy moves in space is helical, the path that all trajectory of all bodies in space moving is helical, double helical. It's like, why does it even matter if it's spherical or a flat plane or pizza or ball or anything? We need to get to the brass taxes of how it's helical and start talking about how it's helical and upend the whole thing.
Okay. Can I respond yet or no?
I can see that.
Yeah.
Okay. One, mathematically, what you're saying is true, but be aware, guys, when you cast down from dimensions, you lose data so that you can't go the other direction. So there is a theory out there that part of our holographic experience is that you are less than your real self on the grander multiverse level, whatever you want to call that. And so you are no more than an approximation. Like Jonathan Kind's Earth 616, according to comic books, that's what our universe is, right? That you are no more than an approximation of the actual you. And there's been a lot of people who've had these experiences. They've been on certain drugs and had in completely other lives, lived, full lives in other places, and then come back and new things that they shouldn't know, etc. So that it's quite potential that the three-dimensional self that you're having is already a lost, like there's a loss of data coming down from a higher dimensional structure. And then secondly, why does it matter about the ball Earth? As I said, it only matters in which performs better as a model, because none of them can be completely accurate. My maintenance is that the Hegime and EPEMC, the plasma electromagnetic sky theory, will perform better than the standard model of the ball Earth, in that there's an allowance for different kinds of core in the Earth, and also explanations for why the Earth would actually flip over, and without, just God does it himself. There's more rigor to it, and it's already produced proof as to why the auroras happen in the thermosphere. And that proof is based on somebody measured the actual values of that atmospheric level. And I can only assume, I'm just saying this, Jonathan, I can only assume that the people who went up there and actually measured those values did so in good faith, and that they were also probably not flat earthers. They were probably people who believed in the globe Earth, but they were using weather balloons, so they themselves were not provers of the globe Earth. But based on that model, you end up doing spherical capacitance math that I did, a month or two ago, and it explains exactly why the auroras are happening at that level. So I have no reason to give up the Hegime model, because I haven't seen anything better from the mainstream or from the alt stream. So I'd have to be convinced why the spheres of heaven and earth idea is not valid. I'd have to be convinced beyond a shadow of a doubt that I should switch it to it.
Yeah, there should be a theory out there that a sedimentary Earth theory, a sedimentary heaven theory, multiple layers upon layers. That's fractal, that's recursive, that's self-similar, and that's more in line with the Dougherty set, and in line with the helices stacked on top of helices that lead to microspire helices, which are the DNA. It's a full threaded network that threads out all the way to the bottom, and the very fringes of light, electromagnetism, is material, the baryonic matter. Baryonic matter is the tips, the very sparkly tips of electromagnetism. The largest part of the body is space, is plasma. 99% plasma is the universe. So if you think of it that way, and the baryonic matter, the visible portion of light, is what stillness is trying to achieve. All stillness is trying to achieve motion and matter. That's what dreams are for. Dreams are still dreams trying to instill thoughts to make motion manifest. And all motion is trying to seek stillness. So we're in the very sparkly light of the, like you sometimes say, retarded potential of light. We are, like Walter Russell says, we're slowed down light, but the whole show is being projected on all scales. The whole show, all intentions. If the sun is intending things to happen, it's happening on Earth. If the sun is intending things to happen, it's happening on the planets. And it's also probably copulating with another star. And stars probably also copulate, and they probably wink and they flirt with each other.
It very well could be why it was attracted to Shamash. the entire catastrophe as we experienced it could have actually been essentially us next to the bedpost as it came a knocking, and then Shamash gets essentially is impregnated on the way, and then when it gets here, boom, explodes, lets out all these babies, and boom, there you go. And that would have nothing to do with our demigods or our anthropomorphists. That would have to do with some kind of cosmic biology that we aren't yet aware of.
So if you guys, so I'm changing gears just a touch, and I want to, but because it gets into whirlpools, vortices, and the toroidal field, and it explains very clearly why we have these eclipses and such. Or it could. I don't know that it has, but it could speak to the models. Have you ever guys taken, like, say, a drain or a whirlpool and looked when I saw a great video the other day. A guy was draining a drain, and the whirlpool, the water was completely undisturbed. Really, it wasn't that, there was no ripples and such. So the water was flowing very smooth. And as it went down the drain, it was creating a perfect circle from the sunlight reflecting to the whirlpool. The shadow that was cast was a perfect circle on the bottom of that floor. So there, we're looking right there is a great example of how an explanation, though I don't have the math on hand and I don't have $56 million a day coming at my disposal like NASA does to be able to prove that. But right there is a great explanation, if we were able to do the work, on how eclipses occur on a stationary, non-rotating, not a blue marble, whatever it is, I don't know, but not a blue marble. And, we all can clearly see the sun and the moon up in the sky at the same time on any given really day. So the whole concept that, the earth is blocking the light going to the moon and all, it's just nonsensical, guys. So explaining how there are shadows cast could be from the etheric field in its toroidal shape through its motion, providing a whirlpool cast shadow over the top of any.
I don't consider the current model of how eclipses happen to be nonsensical. I don't know where you're getting that from, but personally, I don't consider it to be nonsensical. But I will tell you, I had an interesting idea, and I called it jacuzzi theory or whirlpool theory. Essentially, I don't know if you guys have ever had this experience, and you're sitting next to a hot tub at a hotel that's not actually running, but it's still obviously circulating water. It creates these little eddies. And if the lighting is right, though the eddies are three-dimensional, they're like little bitty triangular or conical. They're logarithmic conical structures in the water. They're not quite whirlpools, but they're not stationary, as stationary as normal. But the shadows that it casts when the light goes through, because of the refraction, creates very, very interesting and large structures, some of which I admit were a little bit galaxy-like. And it struck me that our experience in this ether is to see these places as different and like problem or shadow or whatever, and they may simply be simple ripples and structures in the ether on a higher than, so we're in 3 dimensions, so it would be on a 4+ dimension level. Right. And if us, they look like suddenly now this is all chaotic systems. There's no meaning or special purpose. These fucking things are just going however they're going. But for us, it looks like some kind of connection. The car hit me, the car didn't hit me. Oh, wow, what does that mean? We do all that shit. There's nothing in the data that suggests that you were T-boned by the fucking drunk because, you either used to be a drunk or because it was your time to die. Or we add that layer.
Right.
And but these ripples were just fucking moving all over the pool because the pool it wasn't currently in jacuzzi mode, but it was hot and there was circulations of hot and cold. And there are 3-dimensional structures in the water and they're casting these shadows. And I think that it's a mixture of Buddy's theory with chaos, and again, this concept of higher dimensions, projections down to lower dimensions, without getting into string theory. That actually constitutes what our experience really is. But there is some kind of solid. There's this table is crystallized for a reason. There's something when I come back, I can expect this dust to be here. It doesn't just evaporate. It's here. And we've got to account for that in the data too, because if it was purely ether, there's no reason to expect any of this stuff would be so predictable or repeatable. It'd be too chaotic. So we need all of this to collapse into a single theory. I don't think the mainstream has all of it wrong, is I guess my central premise, but it obviously doesn't have it all right either. That's very clear too. And there's a vested interest selling that theory, claiming that it's completely correct. And I know that it has to do with who controls the technology and who controls the people. Whether or not those people have, essentially demigods that are real, that are programming them, I couldn't answer that. But it wouldn't surprise me because, again, if two cannibals want to get together and make babies so they can eat them, that program has to come from somewhere. Where's it coming from? It's evil, but that doesn't answer the question. Where is that data contained? Why is it contained in the system? The system is fully vested in screwing us while telling us everything is going to be all right. I cringe every time I go by this sign that's out here on the road. It says everything will be all right, and I'm like, well, that's the opium of the masses. Sometimes the shit isn't all right. It just ain't, and people got to wake up to that.
Yeah, and I go back to my the issue that I've always maintained on here is that the lies, and and instead of presenting things in a, hey, here's the evidence that we found, and here's the, that's not what occurred, especially in Western educational systems.
True.
The Western educational system was very much so anti-scientific method while teaching the scientific method.
Oh yeah, no, you're 100% right. There's no doubt you are spot on when you say that. You have every right to say that because it's an accurate statement. They say one thing and and then they do another thing.
Right, and so I think, going back to what the whatever the reasoning originally for that, I do not know. Whether it was control, greed, avarice, monopolization of the workforce, which I think it had a lot to do with, but at the same time, I think it had a grander. There was, like you're saying, that there's something encoded in the matrix, or in terms of, sorry to use the word matrix there, but in the ether,
we all know what you mean, yeah.
Yeah. So it's all encoded there for for whatever reason, whether it be a demigod or it's just an etheric pillar. You know what I mean? It's like, because the BJ, was it Boaz and Yassam? It's the Yassin, whatever. So it's the pillars. It's a birkeland current on its own, by itself, sitting there flowing, that just happens to have the need for that particular charge of energy. So that's the driving force behind, cannibalism and pedophilia and all this negative crap, and the lack of empathy is because individuals with the DNA helical structure inside of their body as an antenna is not tuned into that particular, need, that positivity.
Pause for a second. Etymology from Baal, Lord Master, appearing in the Hebrew structures as purported name of a deity worshipped by the Philistines in Ekron. It's likely this was not the god's actual name, and instead was a polemic against the deity, possibly by associating the figure with defecation, hence the flies, because there's a combination of Baal with a word zvav, meaning fly or insect.
Yeah, so it's basically, if I had to make a guess here, this is another Jesuit freaking conspiracy crap where they came in and, since the time of Constantine.
Here's a proper noun. Baal Zvav. So this is Beelzebub. This is Baal Zvav. Beelzebub, Lord of the Flies, Philistine god, sometimes identified by Jews and Christians with Satan. And
was it around the same time as Jesus or before Jesus? And did this have to do something with the Canaanite killing of the children? Because Baal they sacrifice children to Baal.
Right.
Well, remember, buddy, so I was looking at the Hebrew definition of it, and it said that it was a description for any deity or God, not necessarily a particular one. It was like basically saying that's the God you believe in. That's the ball you believe in.
This is interesting though. Lord of the Flies. So H1176, Basilbub, Strong Hebrew Lexicon, 8 times in verses. Okay. All right, now this is from the wiki on Beelzebub. Name derived from Philistine god. Theological sources, primarily Christian. Beelzebub is another name for Satan. He is known in demonology as one of the 7 deadly demons, the 7 princes of hell. Beelzebub, representing gluttony, describes Beelzebub as being capable of flying, known as Lord of the Flyers, Lord of the Flies. The source of the name is in the Book of Kings, 2 Kings 1, 2-3, written Beelzebub, referring to a deity worshipped by the Philistines. The title Baal, meaning Lord, is Ugaritic, conjunction the descriptive name of the specific god. Opinions differ on what the name means. In one understanding, Beelzebub is translated as Lord of the Flies. Also, long ago suggested there was a relationship between the Philistine god and cult of flies, referring to a view of them as pests feasting on excrement, appearing in the Hellenic words such as Zeus, Apimios, or Miageros. This is confirmed by Ugaritic text, which depicts Baal expelling flies. Well, that would be like in that show, the magic show that was on Showtime or HBO, which are the cause of a person's sickness. According to Francisco Sarcino, the series of elements may be inconclusive evidence, but in fact, the relationship to Beelzebub, the 2 constituent forms are here linked, joined by a function that is typical of some divinities attested to in the Mediterranean world. A strong argument in favor of the authenticity in the name of the god of Ekron and its possible therapeutic activities, which are implicit in 2 Kings. Alternatively, the deity's actual name could have been Baal-Zebul, Lord of the Heavenly Dwelling, and Baal-Zebub could have been a derogatory pun used by the Israelites. That seems very likely. In the Septuagint, renders the name as Baal-Zebub and as Baal-Mulan, ball of flies. However, Sammakis may have reflected the tradition of its an offensive ancient name when he rendered it as Beelzebul. And then it goes into the Testament of Solomon. It goes into these things. So I'm not saying anything about spheres here, but I'm going to look into the Oxford etymology.
I think we're on to something on this one. Sorry, but I do.
If someone's playing with a ball, what's your first reaction? Ball? I want ball. My turn with ball. Play with ball. Right. Time to play with ball.
So, don't even get me started. I mean, we've all had children, and that is no joke. You know, it's one of the first frickin' words that you try to teach your child. It just by default. It's not necessarily something that was intended, but it just, I owned a nursery. You know, all the parents had the same thing going. It was always, for some reason, that word, and it wasn't by, I don't know, but, you go through I had to order literature from Mother Goose, from the States over there. We had to order literature for, like training curriculum. And, ball was always a predominant word for the children, always.
Now, here's something I find more interesting is that the how to pronounce says it's Baal boob. So the boob at the end there instead of bub, boob. Baal boob.
I do like boobies. We're recording that. Dang it. Sorry. I forgot we're recording.
Well, we found out that the ball's connected to the shaft and the ball's connected to boobs. So where do we go from here?
Let's see here. I'm looking for the right.
I think it's important to what Ramon was saying about the power behind it, whether it's positive or negative. And I honestly, guys, I can't get on board with trying to still maintain a frequency with that particular.
You know what
I'm saying? Does that make sense?
The only thing that would determine is if the exception of a model rendered you personally less effective than before, then you would go back to, is there something to the idea that Ptolemy's model kept Europe from progressing, which I have asserted in papers before. So here, this is the Oxford online etymology. Ball, round object, compact spheroidal body, also a ball used in the game, circa 1200, probably from an unrecorded Old English beal. Beal is evidenced by diminutive bieluk, testicle, from cognate Old Norse boller, or ball, from Proto-Germanic ballos, source of Dutch ball, Flemish, Old High German ballo, German ball, from the Pi root bell, to blow or swell. The meaning testicle is from early 14th century, compare bollocks. Ball of the foot is from the mid 14th century, the meaning rounded missile used in warfare from the late 14th century. Meaning a game played with the balls from the mid 14th century. The baseball sense of the pitch that does not cross the plate within the strike zone, 1889, probably short for high ball, low ball, etc. Ballpoint pen, 1946. Ball of fire, 1821. Many phrases are from sports to have the ball, hold the advantage from 1400. To be on the ball from 1912, keep one's eye on the ball, figurative sense by 1907, probably ultimately on golf, which is oft repeated advice, figurative use of the ball in someone's course by 1956 from tennis. All right, now here's down here as a verb, 1650s, to make into a ball, from ball, intransitive sense of become like a ball, form a compact cluster, from 1713 to copulate. First recorded in 1940s in jazz slang, either from the noun sense of a testicle or enjoying time. From ball as in balling or having a ball. Now entries linking to ball. Gwel, Proto-Indian European root meaning to throw or reach, with extended sense to pierce. It forms all or part of anabolic, arbalest, astrobleme, ball, ballad, ballet, ballista, ballistics, belemnite, catabolism. There you go. Devil, diabolical, discobolus, emblem, embolism, hyperbola, hyperbole, kill, metabolism, palaver, parabole, parabola, parlay, parliament, parlor, parole, problem.
So a lot of negative things in there. A lot of negative things.
Yeah, but I mean, this word gwel is its root meaning is to throw or reach, to pierce. So piercing is associated with stabbing. So it's an interesting idea. These are entries.
Ballistics, ballistics.
These aren't part of the etymology. These are entries linking to ball. So they are coming in to this site. Does that make sense? So
it's a field. It's part of the field. It's part of the output of the field.
Yeah, but they're coming in and utilizing the word ball. Now it says it's the hypothetical source evidence for its existence of gwel provided by Sanskrit. Apa, Guriya, swinging, balabadi, whirls, twirls, Greek balein. So it's coming Greek. The Greek is balein, to throw so as to hit. In a looser sense, to put, place, or lay, bowl, throw, beam, ray, belemnon, dart, javelin, belon with the E, needle, balazane, to dance, Armenian kelem, I torture. I don't see how that's related. Old Church Slavonic, pain, Lithuanian galas, end, gela, agony, guilty, to sting. And then there's a second entry here.
Oh, Lord, man.
Here we go. Now here's closer. So this one says BHEL, which sounds like bell. Proto-Indo-European root meaning to blow or swell, with derivatives varying to various round objects and the notion of tumescent masculinity. Forms a part of bale, large bundle of package. Baleen, ball, round object, spherical ball, round pot, cup, bovine, male animal. Bovine, of course, that goes back to Jupiter. So there's your maybe connection to ball as Jupiter.
And
tread, beat, cloth, cleanse or thicken it. Hypothetical source evidence for its existence is provided by the Greek leaf, phallos, swollen penis, Latin flos, flower, florere, to blossom, etc. Balak, pimple, bulge, bag, Breton, bulk, flax pod, stare, be bug-eyed, Croatian, Serbo-Croatian blazina or pillow. Interesting. Randomly Excalibur is listed here. An extended form of the root blue is to swell up, well up or overflow. I mean, all this sounds like it's going back to Jupiter and the floods, man. It seems to be the main thing on that end, as far as the swelling and all that stuff. And then they're associating it. But the main part, the actual etymology, just sounds like Germanic stuff. It sounds like North. It doesn't sound related to anything Syrian that I'm seeing. Now the idea, maybe. I mean, it does say here old high German ballo, German ball, from pi root, P-I-E, I don't know what that means, pi root, bell, to blow or swell. So in a very roundabout way, maybe it's coming back from, but I don't see any direct correlation or any like kind of conspiracy to bring the word from the worshipers of Satan to Germany to get them to call this ball. It just seems like they're naming the kid's ball after testicles, as in there wasn't a kid's ball, but there were balls, that people had balls. And then when a kid's ball was invented, then they're assigning that same word because every man's got a pair of balls.
And again, it goes back to me pointing out that it's because of the field.
Maybe. I mean, if according to debate to just the pure field, this is a discussion we had the other day. Everything in the field's related to each other, whether or not they're in attraction or opposition, doesn't really matter. You could hate a guy, you're still in relation to him, but it doesn't mean that you got your idea of buying a Corvette from him. So there has to be both a separation and a uniting to complete the polar thinking. There's how things are related and there's how things aren't related. And that's with everything, unfortunately. I mean, I'm watching boxing here. These guys they're practically the same, right? But in the field that they're in now, there's a clear difference of quality between each of them, and one of them will win. But from everyone on the outside, both of these guys could kick everyone in that entire building's ass, unless there's another boxer who's in the audience, But I mean, Teofimo Lopez here, he's been a champion. I know that. I don't know this Martin guy personally, but if you took him out of the ring, everybody in there could have their asses kicked. So they are much more like each other than they're dislike each other. But inside of the closed container of the ring, they are in complete opposition to each other. That's the state of their existence. And they're forced via the rules to stay within certain physical boundaries. And that's what, to me, that physics tries to do to nature. And Niels Bohr told Einstein, please stop telling nature what to do. I'm done with the etymology. I just thought I would interject and give that since I promised I would when I got to work.
Thanks. Yeah, it's all semantics that we're talking about. But to go back to what you were talking about.
It is and is. Yeah, I get it. Yeah.
To go back and to talk about what you were talking about with hierarchical projections of what it's in mathematics, they call it stereographic projection. And what's happening here is there is information that's lost between the phase transition of the projection from layer to layer to layer, from one tube to the next tube to the next tube, because really planets are tubes. They create a tube, a cylindrical what's the word, vestige, something that is left behind by something that is no longer there. There's these collimated cylindrical, that's what planets are. So like you could say that it's a sphere, or you could say that it's flat, but really
you can use cylindrical coordinates if that's what you're pointing out.
Yeah, you can use cylindrical coordinates, and if let's say the body is larger than just the tiny planet that we see, which is what we're showing, that they're all connected through birkeland currents and filaments, electrical cords that exist in space. According to mathematics, the stereographic projection from one higher dimension, like the fourth dimension, down to the third dimension, there's a lot of information that is lost in translation. There's more information in the Dougherty set, which is a two-dimensional representation of a three-dimensional stereoscopic projection. And then that our three-dimensional world that we live in is a residual of a four-dimensional stereographic projection that builds the three-dimensional world that we're in, and a lot of information is lost there. So there's actually more information on the lower levels and lower tiers of the birkeland current, or these projections in mathematics, than there is on the larger four-dimensional scale, fifth-dimensional scale. Because with every projection, whether it's starting on the outside of the unit and working its way towards the central node or the center, or starting from the central node and working its way outward, there's information lost in the phase transition every time, and there's way more info on the two-dimensional scale. And that's probably part of the thinking of Schrodinger or not Schrodinger, Schwarzschild's thinking in having to have a surface called the event horizon that aggregates all the information on a two-dimensional surface of the bubble that's on the outside of a black hole. Or which I happen to still believe, even though we had a conversation with Crothers and he said that it doesn't exist, I still think that the event horizon exists because it's in the geometry. It's how things break down. It's part of the system of foliation of light foliations. As light foliates off of light, foliates off of light, foliates off of light, it aggregates beings out of cyclicity, fractal repetition and recursion, the planet spinning around over and over and over.
Right, but it might not be an identifiable, measurable, actual boundary. It could, in my mind, be more of a zone type scenario where you're phasing from one to the other, but similar to like a fractal. You can't pinpoint the actual point at which it goes from one to the next thing. It's in perpetual motion, so to speak. So in terms of like similar to how alignment works or something like that, that it would be like a double layer or whatever. It's a zone, it's an area. It's not something that you could physically take a point and say, there's the point with which is the event horizon. It would be more of a zone.
I am not going to concede to the black hole theorists that there's an event horizon, because there's a specific meaning of it, and that specific meaning has no validity in physical reality. It doesn't happen. As for the other point, I'd like to know where your source for that idea is, buddy, because when I went through vector calculus, it was quite the opposite the training that I had in vector calculus. I'm not saying that you're wrong, but I am saying, in my experience in vector calculus, the shadow contains less data than the ball that is casting the shadow. That's just.
I think that's a semantic way. Buddy, if you'll allow me here, it's a semantic way. I understood what Buddy was trying to kind of express, and it's in terms of being able to, it's not that the more information, it's that you can, in a two-dimensional sense, extrapolate through measurements in a point, like I was just trying to describe a second ago, in terms of the event horizon. There's no actual point that you could say that's where it's at, but in a two-dimensional sense, you can assign information. So it's the reversal of thinking of there actually being more information versus our ability to assign more information.
I don't know if you've ever taken a class on how to create extrapolations, but you have to add data. You have to approximate, and then you have to fill in gaps in order to create a smooth enough curve. Otherwise, it's really not any good as far as extrapolations go.
Check this, for example. Our three-dimensional body looks like it's the majority of information of what we are, right? We're mostly space, actually. But you take it down to the smaller scale of that 98 or whatever 70% space we are, or whatever. Who knows? I think it's like 98%. Who knows? I don't know what the percentage of space that we are. But then you get water of that, of the majority of that, of what constitutes our body is then water. And then where is all the information actually? The information's actually inside the DNA. And that's the information. So that's on the smaller scale of the body. The smaller scale has all the information that builds the larger body, and the body itself is not necessarily.
Well, could the majority of the information actually be in flux, so to speak? I hate to use that term, but I mean that's the best I've got right now to describe it. Yeah, but it's in a state of flux. So even though it's the DNA, it's not necessarily the DNA itself that is the information. It's the recepting or the signal, the potentiality of the signal being able to be received by that particular structure of the helical DNA. So it's the influx. So even though our body is technically whatever 70-something% water, it's the information is garnered in again or exists inside of a state of flux, waiting to have a direction or a momentum applied to it based upon the field of the frequency, utilizing the DNA as that kind of router for that.
And then of that, we're finding in biology that it's not even the information is not even in the DNA. It's in the electrical record. It's in the electricity.
Yeah, that's what I'm trying to say. It's flux. Yes, there.
It's according to the first biological robot that has been created, the Xenobot. I forget the gentleman's name who is forefronting that. But according to this, all information for all organs and how they grow is through through electricity, the electrical records of it, and what it's going to become. It's not even in the DNA of the cell of the. So what the heck does that mean?
Douglas Blackiston, or Sam Kriegman.
I can't remember either of their names.
The first Xenobots were built by Douglas Blackiston, according to blueprints generated by an AI program which was developed by Sam Kriegman.
Now these bots, these robots, or these, I don't even know if you could call them robots, these biological bodies that were created, the first created being from humans, actually takes individual atoms. It's either atoms or matter, like individual particles, starts moving around these particles. Just by moving around these particles, they create these particles to come to life. Yeah. So this is a created object, and it creates new babies using just material. I don't even know how. Look into this. It's just absolutely
I'm reading it now.
incredible.
It's saying cilia-driven xenobot locomotion is currently less controllable than cardiac-driven. So it's cilia, basically the stuff we breathe in and out, in and out, in and out.
So it's from a frog. It's actually they took the DNA from a frog, an African frog, and so so the first created golem from humans that we know of is created from a frog. I think frogs are associated with destruction and all sorts of weird stuff and myths and lore. There's a lot of frog iconography. And
it's one of the plagues during the Egyptian.
When you watch Pan's Labyrinth, oh yeah, it was one of the plagues in Mummy. The frog is always associated with disaster.
It was in the Bible, actually. It was in the Bible as a plague for what was it? help me out here, Ramon. It's when the Israelites or the Philistine or Israelites were trying to be freed from Egyptian slavery. It rained frogs on them. Then you know you got the whole Pepe, whatever it is, meme that keeps going around for this whole stuff here recently. I mean, there's something to the frog, and you know you can sit there and boil a frog in water type thing.
I had a vision the other day on my way home. Well, it was more like an instinct, like this. Oh my gosh, I'm about to create something. Like something big is right around the horizon, right? And I'm like, so I'm driving. I'm like, oh my god, okay, I got to get home and start designing. I get home, I start designing. I spent 3 hours. I found the exact body of a frog inside of the Dougherty set. And I'm sketching it out, and I'm like, oh my gosh, this is so blatantly obvious. And I'm sketching the whole thing out, and I print it out. I do all this other shit. I forget to save my work.
Hey, just hypothetically speaking here, guys, doesn't Squatter Man have the same kind of position that a frog would have?
Yeah.
Has that been discussed already before?
Not yet.
Oh, well, there you go.
Yeah. We're getting all froggy, guys. I like it. So I forgot why the frog got brought up. Oh, it's the Xenobot. And then Pan's Labyrinth, there's the frog. You got to go inside. There's folklore and legends where you got to go inside of a frog and retrieve something. And then princess kissing a frog. Hello. You know, turning the frog into a prince. There's a lot of deep things to unpack there that we haven't talked about in this group yet.
They work together to push microscopic pellets into their dish into central piles. So they have like a hive mind type capability.
Yeah, and then those piles become alive. Those are the babies that they build. I don't even know how the fuck it happens, dude. It's so crazy. You watch it and you're
similar to probably like when you cut a tail off of a, you know, salamander or lizard, and it sits there and it'll still flex, it'll still move, etc., and then it'll go back. It might have some similar features there in the terms of the field.
It reminds me of a cat purring. A cat purring or like kneading something with its paws, like kneading, like having to knead and move stuff, like to make it alive, like inanimate, you know? I just don't understand how these things animate in organic matter, or it might be organic matter that they're animating. But anyway, it's all the memory they've shown. You can take tissue from your organ, from your brain, stem cells from all over your body, and those stem cells should grow into a brain and certain environments. You take
harvested from early blastula stage, so of the frog embryo. And it basically, you can then turn that into skin cells or heart muscle cells, either one, according to this here. It's an RNA molecule can also be, so an RNA molecule can also be introduced to xenobots to give them molecular memory. So you can take an RNA injection, folks, mRNA. If exposed to specific kind of light during behavior, they will grow to a specified color when viewed under a fluorescent microscope. So that explains all the fluorescent lights have been going up all over the place here in Florida. Maybe. I'm just hypotheticizing here, hypotheticizing.
So basically they tinkered with this frog's RNA. Is that what you're saying? And it can
No, I'm saying so basically they take the frog cells, like you were just saying. So basically the xenobot's built a date of less than 1 millimeter wide and composed of just two things: skin cells and heart cell muscles, both of which are derived from stem cells harvested from the early blastula stage of frog embryos. All right. So the skin there provides a rigid support, and the heart cells act as a small motor, contracting and expanding in volume to propel the xenobot forward. Right. Then down further, it says other kinds of motors and sensors have been incorporated into xenobots. Instead of heart muscles, xenobots can grow patches of cilia. So that's lung stuff, guys, back to the respiratory stuff that we just all experienced with the COVID-19, and use them as small oars for swimming.
Hair.
However, cilia-driven xenobot locomotion is currently less controllable than cardiac-driven xenobot locomotion. An RNA molecule can also be introduced to xenobots to give them molecular memory. If exposed to specific kind of light during their behavior, they will then grow a prescribed color when viewed under a fluorescent microscopes. So basically, you inject enough of this stuff in a certain form into your arm, then it goes through your body, and then you eat some junk that's been, processed by the Bill and Melinda Gates Foundation or any of these other, evil Procter and Gamble type food conglomerates, and mix the two together unknowingly because you just don't know any better. You're going through McDonald's and picking up a hamburger on your, Friday drive home from work, and you got your RMNA, whatever RNA crap going through your veins, being pumped through, creating issues with your cilia. And then now you can show up and get infected by the frickin' fluorescent lights they keep posting everywhere. I'm just putting 3 and 3 together, guys. Sorry. It's completely on left field, but it might not be far from the frickin' truth. I ain't gonna lie about that. Dang, this is not good, is what this is. I mean, I just went down a whole conspiracy rabbit hole just sitting here on the phone, but there is 100% evidence of all of these fluorescent lights going up. I don't know if you guys seen them in your cities, local to you, if you've seen people talking about them, but there are weird, bright blue lights being put up all over the place down here in Florida. Weird, bright blue lights. I've seen them all over the place in intersections.
Blue light does a bunch of bad stuff, and it keeps you awake also.
It's weird why they're putting it there. So I nobody's really asking the question why all of a sudden these things are going in like they are. They hurt my eyeballs, and everybody's asking the question, who the hell's putting these up and why? Then we have all of these questions about the mRNA vaccine and the ingredients inside of it and what the hell it's really for. Freedom of Information Acts across the country have been issued to, hey, please provide us the fact that you've isolated the COVID-19 virus, and all of them have come back with, we have not, that never took place. So there's obviously something going on with whatever this stuff is. Then you have the entire food industry being put through its complete and total topsy-turvy in terms of, logistics. The farmers being bought out, all of these guys doing the things that they're doing in terms of shutting down the food logistics. And then we've been eating processed crap, basically microplastics constantly for years. Put a Big Mac on the counter and let it sit for a week and see how it looks. Exactly the same as when you put it there. But, we're eating these things and then we're, all of this stuff adds up right there. I'm just saying, there's something to this. I got a feeling, a hankering, or something to this, especially whenever it's cilia-driven xenobots, and that has absolutely everything to do with your lungs.
Yes, I was doing the dishes and I dropped my phone in the water, and now I have to get my headphones to put my headphones on because I might have just broke my microphone.
That seems to be working to me.
So I'm just switching to my headset. I can hear you guys again.
So what is the role of cilia? The bronchus and the lungs are lined with hair-like projections called cilia that move microbes and debris up and out of the airways. Scattered throughout the cilia are goblet cells that secrete mucus, which help protect the lining of the bronchus and trap microorganisms. So if you're breathing, and they found a way to make these basic xenobots at a very smaller than 1 millimeter, make a micro dust, like a graphene micro xenobot made out of graphene, maybe, I don't know. Combine it with a thin layer of graphene. There's potential there. It doesn't have to be big to go up your nose.
Yeah, smart dust.
Or they stick it on the end of those freaking Q-tips they shove it into everybody's nasal passage for months and months and months. We don't know it, but they're on the end of those things.
and the tampons, whatever they're putting in the tampons. Women are hating that shit. There are a lot of women talking about issues with the tampons. Probably making a lot of women infertile.
Okay.
My favorite seeing the guys that put them over their faces.
I'll be honest. I'm coming back. I can't tell that you guys are on any kind of track. Am I wrong there or what? I'm just coming back, so
we went down a rabbit hole based on
3 or 4 minutes.
Xenobots. Yeah, we went down a rabbit hole on Xenobots and what the hell they are and why. We followed the flow of the energy.
Okay.
All right. Just a little bit of talking about future weapons. The golem.
I think you mean present weapons, but
yeah,
you know. I mean, I do. I think there's something to this. I don't know what it is, but there's something there. There's too many connectivity. There's too many connectivities there completely. Especially the fact that they're using this Pepe meme as its main driving meme during this time as a counteracting kind of.
I mean, there is a connection no matter what. It's your mind, and the question is that the only connection? That's the problem. Eliminating that is very, very, very difficult because of the way that the human mind seeks out patterns.
Yeah, but there's something to the fact that they're physically putting these fluorescent lights on the street. There's something to the fact that the mRNA vaccine has been what it has been. You know,
I wasn't here for you talking about those two things, so I don't know.
Yeah. So the lights that are going up in Florida, the fluorescent lights, the mRNA vaccine, all of these things are very much so. Not me in my mind. It's just me reading the facts that are here and then seeing the evidence of what they're putting out there. The fact that I'm drawing the conclusion doesn't mean that it's an illusion in my mind. You know, it's just me drawing the conclusion of the reality of what we're faced with.
These bots are really cool, though, and the fact and the reality of all of this is that nature is nothing like any of us can theorize. It's beyond all of our recognition, and no matter how much we look at it and study it on all scales, all creatures in all environments, it just keeps blowing our mind and proving that all of us are wrong on the regular.
Yep.
So, and what's really fucked up about it that I think is that nature has the ability. It allows itself to be hacked. It allows itself to the rules of nature are not rules at all. They're habits, you know. And there's one
rule I think that's universal, and that's, you know, it's do no harm in terms of what our human existence. I think that should be a universal law.
Living is harm. It's already harming things. They're telling us that we need to stop breathing right now. I don't know if you're hearing what the fuck people are talking about. They're telling us that it's our fault for breathing. They want to kill us. We're a virus. So living is harmful to them. They want
they've got a bad program in them. We know that. And I have the solution. I have 357 solutions for these assholes.
And a bitch ain't one.
Yeah, that's true. You start with 2x4s, then you start adding nails. It just goes from there.
I prefer a spoon because it'll hurt.
I like sharp objects.
We're regurgitating their reality. It's an echo chamber that Alex Jones starts. Alex Jones starts the record. Starts the what's that? Echo chamber. He's the one that sounds it. He's the siren, and then everybody else repeats what he says all the way down, and then that's the reality we all believe. So whoever wants,
I don't know about that.
Well, there's other people talking about other realities, and who else is repeating their realities? You know, I mean, there's it's just like.
I know what you're trying to say. It's like, we could all sit here and have discussions about all the negative things that these individuals are doing to us, or we can have discussions about all the positive stuff. that we want to see in our lives. It's two different realities, and you can jump from one timeline to the next based upon that energetic flow.
Let's debate that. I don't see them as two different realities. Why do you say they're two different realities?
It's not. It's an argument. It's the love and light world versus the I think more pragmatic side of the argument when it comes to the spiritual awakening process.
I mean, they create different outcomes depending on how you think. That doesn't make them two different realities.
I believe in one reality, and I don't think that there's multiple universes. I think that multiple universes is just different time scales and time dilation. And just like we don't bother to pay much attention to a lot of the bugs in their own reality, a lot of the planets don't bother paying much attention to our minutia in our reality. How much is the moon intending on you to turn into a werewolf tonight? How much is the moon? I mean, but it's so fucked up because the mushrooms are in tune with the moon, and then root with the moon, and women bleed with the moon, and but that can't be all tidal locking. There's just so much stuff going on, and all the creatures, the greatest migrations in the world happen. I don't know if it's nightly. I can't remember, but it has to do with the phases of the moon, and it's the squid. The largest migration on Earth is squids from the bottom. They come up from the bottom of the ocean to go up to the top of the ocean, and that has to do with lunar cycles.
I get what you're saying. I get what you're saying. I also think that there's a huge difference between, for me, for some reason, I feel, and I don't know if this is true, and it's just a statement, but humans have much more. I've used in the past the word dominion, but it's more. I think it's different than that. It's
it's a keystone species. We're an apex predator and a keystone species, and we made it to the top. Started from the bottom.
I think we are at the top, and I don't necessarily think, and I think at the top of the 3D, in order to be able to, go from this to what you're describing, planets not giving a crap about us, the same way that we don't give a crap about a fly. Well, I'll tell you what, man, if I got, 50 million flies in my kitchen, yeah, I'm gonna start giving a crap about them.
It's not that I'm saying not giving a crap. It's just that we don't pay much heed to their reality. But that's like one of my favorite things to do is to watch nature shows. So I've just been watching it my whole life, like all naturalists should. If you want to be a natural thinker, be a naturalist. I never even knew what it was called. I was just raised on watching nature shows.
And I think that there's something to be said back again to this concept of the field generating certain aspects, and whether it be a personality in an individual or it be the result of basically us calling, the ball theory, the ball earth, a ball, it's the field that is basically in play. And so, very much so, like an individual will have empathy towards an insect, and no, I'm not going to kill that bug. I'm going to put him outside. Whereas somebody else will come running up and just stomp on it. There's two different types of fields there, two different types of energies behind that particular choice that's being made. And I think that's what we truly are discussing here, in detail form about all these things. We're talking about different details and different, side kind of tangents. But in reality, it comes down to what's the field that is being originated, and that goes back into Jupiter, Saturn, Uranus, all of this different Venus. Sorry, but it goes back into the particular energy emanating from that source type chiralic field that's coming to this particular Terra.
Yeah, people. You could basically paraphrase and say, "How are you feeling today?" "Oh, I'm feeling quite moony." Just imagine people talking like this, not in this lexicon, but, "Oh, I'm feeling very, very Saturn today. Saturn, the god Saturn really has me in this place." And everyone knew what everyone was talking about and what everyone meant when they said, "I'm feeling quite Jupiter today. I'm very Mars," and
Well, you do. Hey, hold up. You're saying that, but Saturnine is a state and jovial is a state. Those exist.
That's exactly what I'm talking about. So people knew this lexicon. People knew that the God was the God. They personified certain emotions and they associated it with planets and called them gods. And then we named every day of the week after them. And we talk about these gods like they don't exist, but every day every day we're talking about these gods and verbatim from what they were invented in a totally different manner. Like they're just cycles of the week, cycles of the day, cycles of light. These gods are light cycles and they're days of the week, and they're also feelings. So all the feelings and other like maybe emotions that people used to attribute with them and personify to the different planets, maybe we can get more to the bottom of
frequency emanating from them based on that, or hypothetically it's the frequency that's being perturbed or the potential that's being retarded based on the flow because of their position in the heavens, and then the etheric field being a basic static constant, then having the perturbations or whatever, the perturbations coming from those particular luminaries in positions from whatever they are, then that creates the energetic field here. The result is the energetic field here on the planet.
It's astrophysical, biophysical, and electrophysical interscalar physics. Interscalar physics. When you realize that the size of the electron has to be the size of the electron, and there has to be a certain amount of distance, it all comes down to approximation distance between double layer to double layer on every scale, and that's all it really comes down to. That builds all things is the distances, and how they're related through Euler's number. That is the first person that I started the 2022 Electromagnetic Universe World Expo with, because he already hit it. He kills it, dude. He cracked the code, and the code is the Dougherty set. He did the Dougherty set on a grander scale, very similar to it, and did the physics of it, and it matches how the distribution of matter and the organization of matter on all scales is broken up in Euler's number and Euler scaling, and boom, mic drop. That's everything's all connected on all scales, and it's not this weird entanglement that is talked about, or spooky action at a distance that Einstein was talking about, where things happen simultaneously. That is the connection is electric. And the electricity doesn't have to move. Nothing has to move at all. The whole reality doesn't even necessarily have to be moving. It could all be an illusion based off of layers stacked on top of layers, holographically projecting layers after layers. So at the very end of the fringes of the tips of the electricity, it's like a whip, and the whip is our fingertips. You can see it in the geometry of our face, the geometry of our body, the proportions, the golden mean. You can see it in all creatures. That's because that tip of the whip is the golden mean. It's stacking layers, layer after layer after layer of the golden mean. Golden mean times golden mean times golden mean, and that's what phase conjugation is. And this whole thing totally could be. I don't believe in a simulation, but what it sounds like what I'm talking about is a simulation. But it's biological, it's living, it's two-way, it's pulsating, it's the perturbations, fulfillment. If electromagnetism has a fulfillment, a purpose. What is the purpose of light? If the purpose of light is to continue to grow and manifest into its many forms, then the purpose of our future is to become transhumanism. It's to become transhuman, to become integrated with the circuit of information and light. So if light's purpose is, if humanity is just one step in light's purpose, becoming many multiple beings and being able to dial into the circuit, that could be what it is. But not talking about just humans, but the main purpose of all of the electromagnetism, if it has an intention or a purpose, could it be just to exist in light, in motion, in the visible spectrum of baryonic matter, just briefly to experience it and then to go back to the other side? You know, it could be that Ouroboros and that the spark of light in existence is that ephemeral, very transient, transcendental, to know that you're going to die feeling, so you can feel alive and live. I don't know. Just kind of talking about the purpose of light.
Now, Buddy and Jonathan, what about if everything has to synchronize? So when you were talking before about the moon and everything with that, we synchronize to certain things around us, the energies, the electromagnetic fields. And when something, so we can handle some changes within it, like different groupings of planets and that. But when you get something big and an energy outside of what the synchronization is within, then all of a sudden you get massive changes. So when you say, like the future of humans and that, well, if you had an energy force all of a sudden that broke that thing, so for instance, if the moon disappeared, all of a sudden women would be in a continuous, their cycles wouldn't work no more. So they'd either be one way or the other, you would suppose, or be all over the place. So I think everything has to synchronize. When you look at the birkeland currents right down, everything synchronizes eventually, and that's when you get some harmony.
Yep, there's order. There's what is it? What did the scientific community just
alignment? I like the word alignment.
Hang on, Ben Stein. What was Ben? There's a design. It used to be called intelligent design. That's the word. Remember when science destroyed all the teachers and got rid of them for talking about intelligent design? Like there's a pattern to recognize here, guys. Like
that was big in the 80s. That was big in the 80s and the early 90s.
That reminds me exactly what you're talking about. There is a design, which implies there's a designer. No, it doesn't have to imply that there's a designer.
Look at your own drawings. Look at your own drawings, buddy. As you do them, and some of the ones I've seen, you end up getting, like you call them, patterns, but it starts synchronizing or aligning within itself. Right? Yeah, and it's not intentional. It's not intentional. It just...
I didn't design any of this. It just came out. That's the nature of it, I wouldn't call myself the designer of the Dougherty set or any of it, because it's stuff that already exists and existed before me, and almost hundreds of thousands of different scientific theories. And I just happen to stumble upon one pattern that creates them all. So does that mean that the sun is giving off one pattern continually? That's what my deduction is here. That the sun is just always just giving off this pattern. That's the Bessel function. It goes through 11-year cycles of this Bessel function, but this pattern repeats. And once you ohm into the pattern and find it home, and you can start to realize, get really into understanding the yuga cycles, and how not only everything is yuga cycles, but get even deeper into the cycles and start understanding how the creatures stack into each other, one after another, which we just call the food cycle or the solar cycle or whatever. Like, and then we learn about it in, we learn about it in elementary school, and then they don't even really talk about it for the rest of school.
Yeah.
And it's one of the most important damn things. That's why they teach. That's why they have to teach the little ones this information. They have to teach them that all animals fold into all animals. We're only taught it at a very young age. Then
it's so obvious that it's one of those things that are so obvious that nobody ever talks about it. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
You guys still
But
there?
what I was going to say is every 11 years. Yeah, I'm still here. Can you hear me, buddy?
Yeah, hang on a second.
What I was going to say,
go ahead.
every 11 years you get your sun cycle change, but it doesn't technically repeat its last one. And what I'm saying is
they're all different. Every single thing is different.
Yes, but as long as it doesn't change too greatly, you will be able to I'll call it synchronize, someone else, align, you'll be able to align within it. But if you get a massive change, well, then, of course, a lot of things can't change with that change, and they disappear or they transmutate or whatever. and Jonathan, the blue lights you'll find, they're promoting them as energy-saving lights.
The Xenobots?
What? They're saying what?
The blue lights you're talking about, you see get put around.
Yeah.
You'll find they're LED based, and they promote them that they save energy, so they don't use as much power to run.
Right. So it's a part of the green climate change. Everybody's going to die if we don't make all these weird changes to all this stuff now. Type mindset.
But then you've come across something with that other, whereby, well, actually, they can create
Buddy
change.
started it. Buddy started it.
Balance. Yeah, well, buddy, they can actually possibly put you out of balance.
That, and I think it has a methodology of identification in the future is what that's what I think it's from. I don't know. It definitely keeps you out of balance, but it could, if they choose to just disrupt your, the cilia in your lungs, if they've got the ability to put these xenobots that Buddy was talking about out into the atmosphere in some way. I mean, we know they're spraying stuff. That is irrefutable. I
think it's interesting your mind went to the negative side when we were talking about xenobots. I was talking about very beautiful things, but naturally I usually see the beauty.
Who did?
I did. I went negative. I went to trying to kill us.
But that's usually what happens with all new technologies. So you're not wrong. I mean, you're probably right, but I was thinking about it as all sorts of wonderful things that help to
benefit mankind.
Well, he's the first person that I heard use the term what's it called? Morphospace. So when you look up morphospace and you start understanding what morphospace is, it's like how the pre-pattern of how organs grow and the pre-pattern of how biological entities have that electrical information that's already there to grow limbs or grow different things. Like another tail, another leg for salamanders.
Didn't what's his name get into this? Didn't Claridge get into this a little bit in one of his talks?
Yeah.
Yeah, but not in the same way. I think he used a leaf as an example, or bio. He was talking about very much what you're saying, biomorphism, but it was in a different regard. It wasn't necessarily the same relation. Or am I wrong there?
No, yeah, he was talking about all this kind of stuff. That's actually where I found out the information of the Xenobots first, was I think from him. Michael Clare just talked. So it goes to support our theory of the electric universe on many scales, and then it gets into the geometry and the biology and the prebiotics that I keep talking about, which I believe that the Dougherty set shows that there is a pattern. There's a pattern that exists that is preeminent, and that pattern is called abiogenesis. If you look up the word abiogenesis, that is the pattern that's pre-existent before things come into reality. So everything has this pre-existent sort of way. The eye is supposed to be shaped the way in the spot and the position that the eye goes. The brain goes in a certain place. Everything goes in a certain place, and it's not the DNA that necessarily always is the arbiter of that. It's
all right. So I'm going to read this
based on conditions.
Let me read the definition for you, buddy. Sorry, I'm going to read the definition, but before I do, I want to mention one quick thing. That Kanye West has recently changed his name to Ye, Y-E, which is the equivalent to yttrium in the periodic chart, which is a drug used in the treatment of cancer. Moving on, morphogenesis is the biological process that causes a cell, tissue, or organism to develop its shape. It is one of three fundamental aspects of developmental biology, along with the control of tissue growth and patterning of cellular differentiation. The process controls the organized spatial distribution of cells during the embryonic development of an organism. Morphogenesis can take place also in a mature organism, such as in the normal maintenance of tissue by stem cells or in regeneration of tissue after damage. Cancer is an extremely high example of abnormal and pathological tissue morphogenesis.
You know, there's one lady that had a cancer or something. I forgot her name. And that's how all this started. They used her blood because her blood was different. And that's how all of stem cell research started. They're still using her blood. Her blood has something special that allowed us to get into it. I can't remember her name, but that really, really freaked me out when it all came down to one person's blood. It's either stem cell research or something, but it started the whole branch of cloning and all this other shit, this one woman's blood. And that reminds me of what you were talking about with Ye and or Ye, and there was another Epstein Island. This is foreshadowing. This is all foreshadowing. Epstein Island, there was paintings of 6 fingers, people with 6 fingers. I don't know if anybody remembers that. I think
Hello.
it had.
My name is Inigo Montoya. You killed my father. Prepare to die. I'm searching for the 6-fingered man. yes, Zorro. Well, that's from Princess Bride, but yeah.
Yeah, Princess
Bride.
He was for a 6-fingered man through the whole movie.
That's the second. That's the second thing about that.
Wait. Let me finish my train of thought. I gotta finish this. So the 6 fingers, the 6-finger painting that actually had Bush playing on the ground and knocking with the airplane, knocking down the towers, and then there was another painting, Clinton, with 6 fingers. And now look at AI. AI can't do fingers. It can't do 5 fingers, really. Why is it putting 6 fingers on all these figures? Sometimes you can't tell a difference between an AI photo and another photo unless you count the fingers. What the fuck is up with that? Come on, AI. 5 fingers. Doesn't have to be 6 or 7. It's like the creep factor of AI and the foreshadowing.
Dude, that's true. And I actually asked that AI bot to count for me. Can you count the number of words in this sentence? And it wouldn't count.
Yeah, ask AI to count how many fingers humans have. Fuck that machine.
That's weird, man. What were you going to say, Ramon?
Sorry, Ramon.
I was just going to say that the other feature of the Beast in that show, that magic show, it was sort of an adult version of Harry Potter. Aside from being made of flies, he had 6 fingers. And that's how he was able to do more magic than everybody else.
Has any? Ooh, wow. Okay.
Do you not know? Do you know what I'm talking about? Do you guys know the scene and all that I'm talking about?
I don't know the scene, but it adds to the relevance of a conversation for sure.
What movie? What movie?
I'll find it for you, and then we'll play it on here. And since we're on Rumble, I won't even care. We'll put it up. So just give me a second. I gotta get it all set up.
Was it it wasn't the Princess Bride movie I was talking about, was it? Anyway, hey, so yttrium, back to yttrium, which is the atomic symbol Ye, buddy. It's used. There's drugs 1, 2, 3. It's got 3 or 4 listed here, and it's for the treatment of various cancers, including lymphoma, leukemia, liver, ovarian, colonal cancer, pancreatic cancer, and bone cancers.
Let's talk about Kanye's handler for a second. Have you guys heard about how many other people Kanye's handler handled until they were dead? Brittany Murphy, her mysterious death with her and her husband. Amy Winehouse, while she died, he was the handler. If Kanye would have taken those drugs that they tried to make him take that day, they would have Michael Jacksoned him. That's what he's fucking saying out loud to everybody. They're like, oh, they could have Britney Spears you. He's like, oh no, they wouldn't have Britney Spears me. They would have Michael Jackson me. Prince. The handler that they had Kanye on was the #1 handler that they handled the Hollywood big shots with, the people that are in the #1 spot. And these people they misdiagnose people with certain diseases so that they can start giving them drugs. Then they have the right to give them drugs because they sign a contract saying that if I get out of control or whatever, blah blah blah, then you give me this drug or whatever. They drug these people and they force them to do their agenda. And Kanye, the whole agenda of destroying the idea that, what was that?
Okay.
No, go ahead, man. What were you saying? The whole idea they're destroying the what?
The whole agenda is is confusion, mass confusion, nobody.
This is a pretty intense scene, and I think that we should all mute it makes a lot. It's gonna set you guys off. It's gonna be awesome. Okay. I mean, you can see the screen, correct?
Yeah, rock and roll.
Hang on.
Okay.
Let me switch my thing here. Let me see if I can see it.
I'm gonna mute my phone. You guys mute too, so that everybody can hear it and all that. You can. Everybody got it?
Got it.
At a quantum level, die Quantenstufe. Wer sagt, dass alle verschwinden müssen? Wer weiß möglicherweise der Flug der Vogels, die sie verletzt Überreste? From the famous German poet and wizard, Rilke, und möglicherweise überleben Blumen. So, for instance, this first device
Quentin Coldwater. There you are.
Well, that guy didn't make it.
How did you like that?
Yeah, it was. I got to go watch the stinking series or whatever to figure out what that's all about. But no, I think back to the six-fingered man concept. I mean, that's been projected consistently on regular Hollywood kind of movies and scenarios.
Yeah, but it's just interesting. It came up twice within this one show, and there was a scene that had the same had both concepts. That's all I'm saying. So,
did you just watch that recently?
No, I saw this years ago now.
But you remembered as we were talking about it here?
Well, it came up when we were talking about the Lord of the Flies, and then it came up when suddenly Buddy was talking about the six-fingered man. So this stuff is part of the data, no less than any of the Venus talk that that's had by the Thunderbolt people. It's clearly part of the general data that is out there. Hollyweird, whether or not it's a conspiracy to inculcate us, I couldn't answer any of that. But it's part of the data, and it's just fascinating that it came up in this way. And anyway, I got to go back downstairs. But Buddy, if you want to continue talking about the disruption program that you were talking about.
Yeah, it's all based on.
Before you
Go ahead.
go, Buddy. Before you go any further, there is a group of people, or a family like, and I'm pretty sure they're down Brazil way, that do have six fingers in real life. Look that up on the internet. There is. I seen a thing on it a few years ago now, where they have six fingers.
Yeah, I'm sure there's people born polydactyl.
What I'm getting at is this. What was unique about this was it seemed to be that within this group, which from memory were all like related, they were all being born with six fingers. So it wasn't like the odd one.
Well, let me tell you about this. This guy was born, or this guy cut his finger off when he was young, like 12. If you cut your fingers off when you're young enough, they'll grow back. But he was like 12. Mostly they'll grow back. He was like, depending on where they're cut, but whatever. He cut his finger when he was like 12, had a baby, and his baby had a mini. digit, because you know it was already programmed into his DNA, which there's a name for that. The name for that. DNA that is external, not internal DNA.
In vivo or in vitro, or isotonic or isometric, isotonic versus isometric versus isotonic.
I can't remember the exact term for it right now. Bruce Lipton talks about it all the time. That's an important word to remember, though. More like metadata, I don't know, metadNA, who knows? I can't remember. But that's cool that, you know, someone's born through the DNA with 6 fingers, polydactyl DNA.
So it occurs in 1 in 1,000 births in the general population. It's found more frequently in African American population, occurring 1 in 150 births. In the Bible, Goliath's third son basically was said, his name was Exactilius, was said to have had on every hand 6 fingers. Samuel 21. Samuel 21. Every hand and every foot. Yeah.
Dang.
Yeah, so he had 6 hands, or 6 fingers, sorry, and 6 toes, and this is according to Samuel 21, 20 through 21. So it's referenced in the Bible, it's referenced in birth charts, and it's affecting 1 out of every 500 to 1,000 babies worldwide, globally.
That's that 1 in 1,000 beams of light.
Some weird stuff, man.
When we succeed, if we succeed, which we will, George Bush Sr.
1,000 points of light.
Yeah.
Yeah, for me, it's a matter of, you know, going back to the conversation of whether or not, you know, you utilize that, because I consider the ball aspect a negative energy field, basically because it is a deception. So I think for me, the reality comes down to, until the quote unquote controllers or the monopoly men stand up and take responsibility, not take responsibility, but just allow the truth to be and flow free, and then be discussed in an open forum. You're just going to contain. That's just all they're doing, is containing a negative energy flow and then directing it the direction that they want to direct it to, and that's not okay. That's just not okay.
Yeah,
I just can't get behind it, you know.
It's chaos magic. It's taking advantage of how fractals grow. It's taking advantage of virality. It's taking advantage of how viruses grow. Using us, blaming us as being the virus.
Yeah, and then putting it on us is like as if we've done something wrong by just existing. And that's a shame, you know, and it's really just, look, I understand the concept of, you know, hierarchy, or the concept of, you know, the strong beat the weak, all that kind of stuff. But that's not what's taking place here. It's just the individuals that know more are using that knowledge against others. And I mean, it goes back, I say secret societies and Freemasons and all that, and it's not. It's, you know, those are just foot soldiers. There's a group handling and doing this stuff and directing the ebb and flow of information in a very, very dramatic way. And until we all, as a people, stand up and say enough's enough, we're just going to be at the mercy of the flow in the direction with which they choose. So it's
that's why I think it's so important what Kanye West is doing right now. Whether it's a show, which it is, and he's still got handlers, you know,
he's just disrupting the flow.
Well, it's extremely important and pivotal, just like similar to what Trump did. You know, you got these chaos magicians or nonsense people, the jester, you know, coming out and saying exactly how it is. Dave Chappelle is one of them. You know, why do we look at Dave Chappelle's shows now like he's the most wise person on earth? You know, George Carlin, because comedians get to the top of the fucking pinnacle, and they're allowed to say what they say. By the way, we're all joking about what we've been talking about, right, guys?
Right, it's all been a joke.
Yeah, so this can go on air and nobody can think we're serious, right?
Right. I mean, we've referenced The Princess Bride, for crying out loud, man.
Yeah, nobody can take us serious. We're talking about real life golems, real first created beings by human beings. Those don't exist. Come on, Xenobots, they're not real.
Come on, that's Wikipedia BS. Somebody just put that in there to mess with people. That's all that is, right?
Well, they say that 50 years ago, 400 people controlled 90% of the world's wealth as far as humans are concerned. Now it's less than 100. And when you go through some of the different things that are coming up, you got to wonder within these 100 if the majority of them have got some view that they could even sacrifice themselves and they'll come back better and stronger. So,
hey, watching Star Wars, Obi-Wan, you know, he's like, you strike me down, Darth, you know, I'll come back more powerful than you could possibly imagine. I can't see that being the case whenever they've contributed so greatly to the demise and confusion and negative energy field of so many on the planet, that they would be in any way, shape, or form rewarded with any kind of karmic plus up in the esoteric world.
Yeah. But that's, I was just wondering whether they actually believe, like, doesn't matter if they go down with it, they'll be back and they'll be better than ever. Is that part of the reason why we'll go to Mars?
They believe that they're above the law. The Bible used to write kings. It still does write kings as above the law. We are subordinate to the local government. It says to be subordinate to your local government. But it also warns us and says that the local government is wicked beyond all belief. Well, that's our heart. Our heart is wicked beyond all. I forgot that one. That's pretty crazy too. But the principalities and powers that govern the world, that's where the wickedness is. The Bible says that too, but it also says to obey, because they run through bloodlines. Their bloodlines, who knows, they might be generationally cursed, like with 6 fingers, polydactyl. You might have these people who are incested and in bed, and just over and over and over generations of wickedness that see themselves and wrote themselves into the Bible as above the law, so they can do what they want.
Yeah, I could see that. Definitely, considering the number of times that thing's being revised and changed, and then, the Constantine during his time putting multiple polytheistic religions together into the monotheistic kind of concept in terms of,
Kanye's trying to put himself in this kingdom of people that can say whatever they want, because he says, I can say whatever I want. I just saw I love watching it. It's addictive. Whatever he's doing is addictive. I watched his interview with Piers Morgan, and he's saying whatever the fuck he wants. And that's what true freedom of speech is. Now, we've been blinded by Alex Jones once again. He was the first big guy that they had to deplatform. While Trump was in office, they allowed this deplatforming bullshit to start happening, to silence people. And this wasn't happening before Trump. It wasn't happening that I remember before when Obama was in office. It started when Trump was in office. Deplatforming people, silencing people, moving forward with the agenda of making us think that it's okay for Alex Jones to be deplatformed. Then they started deplatforming everybody subsequently after that.
Well, I think that it hasn't been prevalent. They've always done it in subversive ways in the past.
But Alex Jones is an actor, so he has to go along with it. He knows the plan. The plan is the plan. he gives they give him the script. I mean, and my point is that we're all they wanted to get someone. He was the most watched person on the planet, Alex Jones. He had so much sway in the votes between Hillary and Obama or Trump, whatever it was, both. And he was the most watched show. They had to decentralize him, deplatform him. He was in the center of everything, and give other people the microphone. After they deplatformed him, more people started watching Joe Rogan. Joe Rogan exploded, and they've been in bed since the beginning. Joe Rogan was in on the scam. I call it a scam, the hoax of when they went into Bohemian Grove. Joe Rogan was in on that shit. Now we have these two gatekeepers, two of the most watched people on the planet still to this day. They had to decentralize it and make it a reality that, because I didn't hear much backlash from many people about this is a slippery slope. We just kind of slipped and slid right into it. And they had to use, like I'm saying, Alex Jones, other big name people. And then from there, we're all like, yeah, that person should be deplatformed. This person, get rid of this person, get rid of this person. And that was, then everything had to splinter into other companies, you know, like Rumble, like BitChute, these other places that are going to claim that you can have an open voice and an open platform. The whole point is destruction of the Second Amendment and freedom of speech.
But
Yeah, I think so.
buddy,
Go ahead.
if you read Rumble and BitChute's terms of reference, they still have the same in the paragraphs. You know, you can't do hate speech and all this sort of terms, which means eventually, if enough pressure is put on them, they will start doing platforming too. But at the moment, they're not seen as a big view platform, so they're pretty much left alone. And when you go back and you talk about the deplatforming that started occurring under Trump, it got to not some little person writing some book or saying something. It got to they started deplatforming people in positions that Trump had as the president of the United States. So that then became, some people then were showing their real power in that I can even shut down the president, say, of the United States. And if I can shut him down,
that's where
I can shut anybody in the world down. Yes.
Yep. That's exactly where it led. I saw that all happening, and everybody was just talking about it like it was just something that was allowed to be on the table, just like they used Snowden to come out and say, hey, the NSA's been spying on everybody since this started, and nobody stood up and said, hey, they can't do that. Instead, everybody just started saying, hey, Snowden can't be in the country. Snowden's a whistleblower, distracting us and putting the attention on Snowden, and then making Snowden a hero. Whereas that was the distraction in and of itself. What should have happened is America should have uprised and said that we're not allowing this spyware to be on to happen, and we could have done that, but we didn't. Nobody stood up and said a damn thing.
Yeah, I mean, Google, I watched a thing on Google. A reporter, actually, he took two phones, he stuck them in his pocket, he put one on airplane mode and put the other just in regular mode. But neither one of them had SIM chips inside of them, but they were powered on, and they didn't have any Wi-Fi access, anything like that. So it was just basically two phones traveling through town, right? And so as he traveled all over town, he went through New York, and he did, like I said, I did a 14-mile tour, getting in and out of different places throughout the city. And I came back home and he said, look, we have here, he set up a machine. He said, this is the machine. It's like an in-between machine, so it'll intersect whatever data is being transmitted the moment I turn the Wi-Fi signal on, and we'll see what happens. So he turns it on, and both of the phones had over 300 kilobytes each worth of information, plotting exactly his entire day, where he went, as far as how and when he got out of the frickin' car. It registered and put a thing walking. I mean, it gave every single piece of evidence of that person's path throughout the course of the day, and it sent it to Google instantaneously without a SIM chip, without anything. And that's the kind of information that they have. And they did it underneath the guise of marketing, right?
Well,
Well, it's just
it goes one step further than that, and you can buy a phone and not even turn it on or activate it, and it knows exactly where it's gone its entire life.
Well, and see, that's the thing. So if we sit here and
battery.
try to, privacy is a thing of the past completely and fully. And if you take that information, even after 1 year or a day, and provide that to an AI program, an algorithm, and allow it to have access to that information, we're as good as done. I mean, it's over. It could sit there and make presumptions or whatever on every single thing about you as a human being. But when you're constantly cross-referencing data on top of data on top of data, the ability right now, I can guarantee you, the reason we're hearing in the news about AI, we're seeing it on television, they've been talking about it for years, and we've been watching movies about it for years. But I think the reality is that it's been very much so part of this system for much longer than we even understand. And not only that, but it is being used to control the ebb and flow and tide of basically setting up echo chambers, creating who can be a bad actor or not a bad actor, such as an Alex Jones type or a Kanye type. Even though individuals have free will, they place the positions and the individuals in certain circumstances that, yeah, he's going to make the choice because they know he's going to make the choice. It's insane. And so it's back to the whole concept of humans having free will. And because privacy is one thing, but it's the ability to actually have free will. And we only have free will based upon the parameters that are being provided to us like what Andy was saying a minute ago, the 100 people that control the wealth on this planet. So I don't know. I think, honestly, until we fully and completely break free and clear of the two things, one, the ball energy kind of field, and then secondly, the monetary field that goes along with that, those are two different fields, but they're very much, I think, intertwined and one and the same. But until human beings are able to be broken free from that desire or need or whatever, we could talk materialism all day. That's one thing. It has more to do with the flow of money, using that as an energy source to control the ebb and tide of our free will. So those two fields, humanity is going to stay devaluating and de-evolving. The de-evolution of mankind will continue until those two fields have been properly addressed and dealt with. That's my opinion.
And the 100 people that control the wealth never created their wealth. It was inherited. That is the big thing that you look everywhere. There's very few people now that get real wealth in their lifetime.
They're making it harder and harder BlackRock's making it harder and harder to get to the point where we can get any wealth or attain any wealth.
If you do, it is very, very controlled conditions and very, very much isolated incidents based upon those controlled conditions. Period. And now the difference that I'll say to that is, if you go to Qatar, so they designated that city and they flooded that city. And basically, if you were a Qatari, right? So let's say, I don't know, hypothetically, there's more than this, but let's say there's 8 specific family lines there in Qatar. So each family line, right, whether it be the Al Dumaim family, that's a UAE, sorry, but so go with the Al Thani family, the Al Graf, the Al Thumama family. So there's multiple, I've forgotten them all, but let's say, you go to those families, the families are responsible for hierarchy inside of the family based on their social structure. but the money just flows in. They set up all the laws, all the regulations, everything as kind of a test bed, I think, for what's taking place across the world right now. They're trying to push this World Economic Forum, but it existed as a test bed there in Qatar. And what happened is basically each family was awarded certain rights. So as a Qatari, you could only set up businesses, right? You had the 5149 rule that was mandatory. So in order for you to be Caterpillar and come sell your dump trucks in the country or to even rent them to somebody, you had to have a 51% partner that was local. So it had to be local partnership. So that's how they all made their money, is they would award these major deals and basically assign Mercedes goes to this family, Caterpillar goes to this family, the Intercontinental Hotel goes to this family, and then the family would then sit there and change and hand this out to their children each as the bloodline change, or not bloodline, but each child, whatever, they would give that as part of their wealth. And that city from the 70s till now has gone just insane. Just, like Dubai is another great example. It's the same concept existed in Dubai, but it was in Qatar just blatantly obvious. But it was a microcosm of the whole, keeping it in the family, keeping the wealth in the family, and I think that was a great, if you just look at that model that took place there in Qatar on a micro scale, you can see what Andy, I think, is talking about on a macro scale.
Yep. And you got to remember in those places, they don't, now from memory, without getting into religion, they don't charge interest. They charge equity.
Andy, it's worse than that. Worse than that.
Well, they're also going.
The king would go every once in a while. The emir once, I think it was I know that it happened at least 3 times in the time that I was there, in the 15, 16 years that I was there. But he would just erase all debt. So if you came in, and so you would see it, no joke. My buddy worked at the Qatar National Bank, QNB. He was one of the head guys there. And he was like, okay, John, go get yourself something at the bank. If you can get a loan, go get one now. I'm like, what? He's joking, of course, because it's only for Qataris. But they would go, basically, he would see all of these guys lined up coming in, getting huge loans for Mercedes, for expensive cars. They would get 2 or 3 cars. They would buy a house, whatever, because they knew they had gotten word through the grapevine that was coming. And so basically, he would see this flood of people coming in taking out loans, but they would all go get loans from the banks, and then the emir would just forgive all the debt in the whole country for all Qataris.
Yep.
Period. So you could have outrageous credit card bills, and the emir would just forgive them all and make the banks erase them down to zero. I'm not even joking. And that happened 3 times while I was there.
Because I'd say that, as I understand it, they don't charge interest.
It's called the banks
like we have.
Yeah, it's not like we do. What they do is they charge service fees instead. They call it service fees. And so you have to pay on the front end. And so then what guys do is they'll write post-dated checks for the service fee over a 12-year period. So it's like they legally get around it, but it's still technically interest, but it's not. So the bank still has structures to get around. I forgot the name of the way that they work. What it's called? Something banking. I forgot the name of it. It's a certain style of banking, but basically only 5 or 6 different banks in the country would allow that type of banking because it's not internationally recognized. So they didn't have the leverage and the ability to provide as much liquidity as somebody I don't know, Wells Fargo or any of these major banks that we see internationally, because it wasn't in line with their practices. And then, of course, the international practices, they weren't allowed to do it that way. I'll have to look up the term. Sorry, it keeps sitting on the tip of my tongue. But so they had 5 or 6 different banks that only operate in that very strict way that you're talking about there. I've got to look it up now. It's going to bother me till I find it. Hold on one second.
But they've had the energy they've had the energy income to allow them to do that.
Yeah, it was based mostly on futures. They went in and basically, because they discovered a 30-year liquid natural gas supply, they were able to go and say, for the next 30 years, we're going to be able to produce X amount. So therefore, you've got to give us, all of these loans. So the World Bank and the Economic Forum and all these folks would just pour money into the country and allow them to just hand them money, hand over fist, based on the futures.
Yep.
So the Emir was able to take loans out, and that's how they purchased half of London. It was based on futures of their liquid natural gas production.
Mm-hmm. Yep. And aren't they making a killing at the moment?
Yeah, they've been, the second per capita, most expensive country in the world as far as, individuals and money. And then, within a very short amount of time, they're the number one airline, in the world. It's like, how can, and it's hard to compete because all of these different things they have, such as, going after the bid for the Qatari or for the World Cup, going after purchasing half of London, setting up this airline, the Qatar Airways. It was all government. The government would just pay for everything. Even salaries for staff would be subsidized by the government. So it's like they didn't really have the same kind of competition on a international scale as somebody like the United States or anybody else, really.
And again, that comes back to what you said before. It's about the freedom of the individual, right? What you said before.
Right.
It's not so much freedom of speech; it's the freedom of the individual, because it's become very clear with the World Cup that the individual that made the sacrifice for that was the people they imported to do the work.
Oh yeah, I mean it's, I don't know, you could sit here all day and go into the details of it all. It's just it's bad all the way across the board. I think in terms of, I mean, I knew several lawyers that were part of the team that put the bid together, and some of the stories these guys told about who, hey, yeah, dude, I don't even know how many briefcases of money to different locations. That dude, after they were awarded the cup, that guy had to leave the country, and he's now in Africa somewhere, hanging out, earning whatever, doing whatever he's doing. But he left the country. He's like, yeah, I'm not staying here. I can't. They won't let me. They told me it was part of my deal. I had to leave. He wasn't allowed to stay in the country because he carried one too many briefcases and too many people's names that were involved in it all.
Yeah. So anyway.
Yeah, it's not a good thing. Sorry.
No, I know, and I remember out here they ran a bid a few years ago. It must have been for that one, even. And I know then they talked about the money that came out after it. Some of the money that was handed around during the process. Yeah, it is. There's a lot of people make a lot of money out of that without the people before you even look at what it's about. Yeah.
Yeah, and it's like, I understand it. I get the whole issue, but it's like the same gripe that I had against U.S. government contracting. I would sit there for years trying to go after contracts, for different projects in the Middle East, and it was all predetermined. You'd sit there and have the illusion as if you were going to be able to actually have a shot at this. And eventually you just realize, man, there's no point in doing this. There's no point. You're never going to, you can't beat these guys whenever they've already it's been predetermined already. Even in the U.S. government level, it was so sick because I don't know how to describe, because that's not 100% that the contracts were predetermined, but at the highest levels, they absolutely were absolutely predetermined. Like, a great example is AT&T versus Vodafone. You know, they went in for who was going to go after the phone service, providing the phone service for Qatar, the entire infrastructure, because it was government built under the QTEL initially, and they had to separate out in order to be able to be competitive in the international world. They had to bring in somebody else, have another system come in and be able to say, okay, we're just going to rebrand, and now we're underneath the ownership of this company, and I don't know, all that kind of crap.
But, well, going back to what Buddy was talking about before with Snowden, at the end of the day, what Snowden did was confirm what everybody who'd had a look basically knew. It wasn't when you think, it wasn't oh, we never knew. He just confirmed.
Yeah, it wasn't a big shocker.
What? Yeah. For the majority of people, and the other majority of people, well, who cares? Sort of thing. And that's the same with the telecommunication systems. And so now they've found ways.
Right, and I don't want it to be the same thing with deplatforming people. It's normalizing everything. Normalization is weaponization.
Yep, and that comes back to.
Yeah, they're weaponizing fucking everything. They're weaponizing everything, and they're normalizing everything too at the same time. It's like a combination of the two, weans it in.
And it becomes a new norm, so it becomes the new synchronization of everything.
Yep.
Yeah, that's what I don't understand is how, I've seen the charts that the CIA does. They say, over here on the left, you have the blue pill sided guys, and over here on the right, you have the right pill guys. And those are very, very small numbers, actually, because you have extremists on both sides. And in the middle is really kind of where everybody relies. Like 80% of the population is right there in the middle. And so that's, the quote, swing vote, whatever you want to call it. But it's not. That's the majority of the population, and going from one direction or the other is always, I think, highly important. And I think these propaganda machines, the Hollyweird propaganda machines, all these different methods that they use to pump us and turn our heads left and right. Like I was talking to somebody, I think it was you guys, but I brought it up to Ramon. I watched this, you guys know Jimmy Corbin, whatever, the kind of heavyset comedian, James Corbin.
Yeah.
So he was doing a show, and he had like 4 people up there, 2 Hollywood stars, Harry Connick Jr., and then the lady that played in a couple of movies, blonde-haired lady, real attractive. And then so this magician sitting in between them, and he's like, look, I'm going to show you how this is done. I'm going to show you how you're all being messed with, And he sat there and had these white cards and a black marker, and he real quick was doing like, okay, if I just were to write something as fast as I can in 3 seconds, and I would just, just anything like that, just what would you write, And he sat there and did this whole bit, and at the end of it, he had a Superman symbol S, he had a, the cross like for Jesus, then he had a rabbit's head or something, I think, and then he had a mountain, like a picture of a mountain. Now, in between this, he also had this young lady where he drew a hand with the candles on a hand, or candles next to a hand or whatever, and she drew the same thing that he drew just because of his subliminal, messaging to her. But that wasn't, where it got weird. Where it got weird is he had passed out cards to the entire audience. He said, okay, audience, now, and this is after he had sat there and done all this talking and sleight of hand and doing his little bit with this lady, the actress on the couch, making her draw his hand with the candles. Because they both drew the same picture. And then he made the host, this guy James Corbin, draw a picture as well and put it face down on the table, at the same time. And, in between this time, he's just talking and doing his thing, And then he goes back out to the audience, says, okay, audience, now stand up. Everybody had a card and a marker, and he said, now listen, I'm going to count to 3 very fast, as fast as you can. And he just did this whole bit about how fast it needs to be. You don't need to let anybody see you next to you. You just need to do this as fast as you can. Please, 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 fast as you can. Put it to your chest. As soon as you draw it, I'm going to count to 3. Draw whatever comes to your mind. and put it to your chest as quick as you can. 1, 2, 3, go. The entire audience drew a star. The entire audience. And put it to their chest. And he just started randomly picking people. Okay, you, sir, show me yours. You, ma'am, show me yours. Show me yours. Now, everybody, show me what you drew. Everybody drew a star. And he's like, how did I make you all do that? And he goes back and he picks up, this is how I made you do it. You think this Superman symbol is a Superman symbol? No, that's an S. You think this cross is a cross? No, that's a T. You see this mountain range? That's not a mountain range. That's an A. You see this here? That's not a rabbit head. And he turned it upside down. That's an R, star. So I sat here and subliminally put this into all of your heads. Now, what do you think? You don't think Hollywood's having an effect? You don't think that these things are affecting you? And that's what people don't seem to understand, is how easy it is to drive the human psyche into a certain direction, to turn your head left or right, just based on very, very minimal input. And we've sat here and watched these televisions, these tele-lies, these channels on the TV, funneling constant streams of channeling, whatever the hell, I don't know, but right to our heads, right to our brains, programming us. That's why they call them programs. I'm not telling you guys anything you don't know, but I just found it so interesting watching that in real time. And it was all done, guys. I just described it. In the amount of time that I described it was more about the amount of time that it took him to do this. It was only like within 3 minutes. And he convinced the entire audience in 3 minutes in live real-time television to, I don't know if it was live, but to draw stars. It was an amazing trick. And it speaks volumes to how little we truly know about ourselves and our mental capacities. And then, B, the effects that we allow out there in the world to have on us. And that, again, goes back to why, buddy, back to the original conversation with Baal worship, that's why I think it's so important, because that's a negative energy stream of confusion and lies and manipulation. And that's why I think it's in place to begin with.
Yeah. Yeah, it's all, I think, for mass confusion, creates mass chaos, creates disruption, creates agendas to be
they can come in as long as you're in a confused state, which you fear things you don't understand, so to speak, quoting the little Batman character guy. But you fear what you don't understand. So if you don't understand something, you have fear of it. That means confusion. Confusion and fear are synonymous, and therefore they can come in and overlay whatever agenda they choose on top of that, and you will eat it up like a fat kid does a cupcake.
Yep.
We all do it. I've done it my whole life. I'm just tired of it. I don't want to be subject to their whims any further. Period.
So do you have a plan, Jonathan? Do you have a plan to get off it?
So far, nothing that doesn't require a hammer to somebody's noggin. But yeah, because at the end of the day, that's all tyrants know. That's all they'll ever fear. And I've quoted this in the chat on several occasions. It's this Tom Brown character. I got the book right here. I'll look it up. Just make sure I'm reading it correctly. He says, a fleeing animal is a vulnerable animal, and every carnivore in the forest likes an easy kill, period. So until we get these ass crackers fleeing and afraid of us instead of the other way around, there will be no recourse. Right now, all of us are the ones that are constantly fleeing, jumping from one foot to the next, going up, down, left, right, BA start, trying to figure out what's going on in our world. They've got us fleeing.
I'll add to that. You can learn a lot from an animal by how it eats, but you can learn a lot more by what it's willing to sacrifice for a meal.
That's true.
That's a good point. Yeah.
So if it's willing to sacrifice its kid, or kangaroos kill their kids, sometimes.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of things. Anyway, that's not the direction I wanted to go in. But
No,
yeah.
it's just, I mean, I get what you're saying. I mean, it's just nature's brutal. And honestly, it is in a lot of ways. But I think that, again, it goes back to what separates humanity, in the sense of why we are such a keystone creature. It's because we have the ability to differentiate. See, an animal most of the time acts upon instinct and instinct only. So the concept of empathy is there, but it's not always. It's just as diverse as it is with the humanity. You see some people runs across the room, immediately stomp on a spider, whereas somebody else will go get a tissue and try to put it outside. Those are two different types of human beings tapped into two different energetic etheric fields.
Someone also worship the spider.
Well, that's a weird thing, buddy. That's weird. Why would you worship?
You know I like it weird. Be the weird you wish to see in the world.
Right. Why would you want to worship spiders?
Well, they worship owls. I really like salamanders. I want to name everything Mander. I want to put Mander on the end of every word. It's all plasma morphologies, right? So it's
right.
Always changing and growing limbs.
Well, honestly, Andy, to answer your question, man, I don't have an answer or a plan.
No.
I mean, at the end of the day, the streams of flow. I mean, and I'm, working with Ramon on some things, projects. I've worked, with these other guys. I've got this young lady in New Jersey I'm working with. I mean, there's progression in what I'm trying to achieve, but none of it takes place without an injection of resources from one of these outside sources that have already achieved certain, material wealth in a negative way. It's unfortunate, but it's the reality.
That's it. The bottom line is you can't be free unless you've got the resources, and they're going to continue to be there in the future, which means you can never let go. It's not like you can go and get some little island on that, because that little island is still got some sovereign state controlling it. So they're still going to have their hand over the top of you, which then leads right up through all those different things like IMF, World Bank, all that, ultimately, and it goes to these few families at the top.
Yeah, and I honestly, I don't know that we're not going to be able to achieve. Yeah, I don't think we're going to be able to get out of this without some form of divine intervention of some form from the etheric field. I mean, we sat here and talked about earlier all of these, energetic divinities, based on Jupiter, Saturn, all of these different equivalents.
Yep.
And ultimately, the way it is now, I don't see. And I'm limited in my ability to have understanding, but without some level of intervention from some other, positive field, rather than this negative, godly, just evil demonicness, crap. I don't know. I don't know any other way to say it. It's just negative energy flow that has created a world full of tyrants from the highest level down to the lowest cockroach running around repoing people's vehicles. It's like they're even empowered to this day to be the cockroaches that they are. The tyrants in the police station. Most of the guys in the police force are good dudes, but it's that 1%. But then immediately, if that dude's having a rough day, they move straight into tyranny, straight into it. It's like there's this just a constant field of negativity that it's overwhelming the entire population, to where the flood stories in the Bible make complete and total sense.
So something that over time, I've sort of thought about. You go back to I can't think of his name off the top of my head now, but he believed that this planet often, basically, to put it turned upside down through its cycles. Right now, listening earlier on when you were talking about the birkeland current, we could be for any for any reason, and I think Buddy sort of said, well, it could be, it could not be, who knows. We could be the pizza shape and the sun's ahead of it, and we're following in a spiral around the birkeland current, and there's probably a mate to it, and every now and then we cross paths. And what I was going to ask Buddy was, if you had that spiraling system with the sun, so really if we're going around the sun, we're not going around the sun, we're following a lot. We'd be going behind. We'd be behind it, if you get what I mean. You couldn't be in front of it, because if it's moving.
That lines up with
you
the
could,
redox process in the human body right there, what you're saying. It truly does.
right?
It does.
So if it's spiraling around, the galaxy that we're in on that birkeland current, we can never get in front of it. We're always so there's something attracting the sun, pulling it along or drawing it, and then of course we're drawn to the sun, and we're cycling around the sun, and the other planets are too. And we don't cycle in a regular circle like when you look at it. It does have more of an ovally type. You see Jupiter and Saturn and that, they go way out and then they come in closer and that. So what I was saying to Buddy is, if you drew that sort of a system, would eventually through them rotations, we actually come out upside down to what we are today over a period of cycles.
Yeah, I was actually considering that we're about to plug into the past. Like the whole cycle of what the past was is about to be what we're going into. Like the Bible predicts, like godlessness and creatures that were mating with creatures, and fallen angels, all sorts of weird stuff. What if that's just that the angels falling to earth is just a cycle and it's going to happen again, and and our technology is helping perpetuate and plug us directly into the circuit, and it's like gonna, because when heaven and earth merge and become one, the promise of God will be fulfilled and complete, and there'll be that's what the New Jerusalem is.
Yeah, I think, if you want my opinion, man, I think it's the opposite direction. I think they wrote these books, put it into the consciousness, and then we, as the as parts of the creator, so as many creators ourselves, we manifest these things into reality ourselves through.
Then it comes directly from the birkeland currents, from thoughts, people writing thoughts. That's why Elon Musk came on Joe Rogan, and when he was trying to fearmonger us about AI, getting us all afraid of AI, he's like, but there's one thing that's more dangerous. There's nothing more dangerous than a thought, And he's like, so then that's when they started banning people and how they think, and that's what, after that, subsequently they banned Alex Jones.
Yeah, and I think that's what we're looking at.
Yeah.
It's they put things out into the the ethos. They put them out in to be consumed and thought about and constantly, processed by the humans, by our own brains. We process it. We tie emotional attachments to it that strengthens it even further, and then eventually it manifests itself into reality.
And you made a very important point there. We get emotionally attached to so many things that are technically irrelevant to our life, and we won't let go. And that.
Yeah, and I think that even speaking to the Bible in that regard, is they take, or it has taken, so it's a physical. They anthropomorphized the concept of God into physical being. So that whole storyline of Jesus coming down and all of these things of him representing and being a representation or a divine presence on the earth is. Go ahead.
That's probably so that we can have a direct connection to know our infinitude with our Creator, so that we can excel to another level other than the low vibration of guilt. Everybody's a sinner. We had to realize this. Okay, how do we get out of our guilty spell? Everybody was probably walking around as a guilty spell, doing sacrifices to try to feel better. And this guilt that was just weighed on everybody's heart needed to be lifted. So a way out of the guilt is the perfect blemishless sacrifice of Christ, which quote unquote was supposed to be the last sacrifice. You don't need to sacrifice anything or anybody, because you don't need to get that power through sacrifice, because the guilt is given through grace and forgiveness. So we had to write that into our script, into our minds, so that we could realize, oh damn, I did some fucked up shit today. And there's plenty of ways through it, and every religion has their way through guilt. Every religion, you have, whether it's lashing, whether it's sacrifice, but you got to get rid of that, and then you're gonna sin again, and then you're gonna be like, fuck, dude, what's wrong with me? I'm just broken, and then you start realizing, wait, there's probably a curse on us. So in many religions, there's a curse on humanity.
And I think it speaks directly to what Ramon was talking about earlier. It's
elevate.
And the spiritual world talks about it, ascending versus descending, and the concept of fallen angels. It's basically that is what it is describing, is that we've come down into this dimensionality here as physical manifestations to experience all that you're talking about. But we did come down to this level, and as a result, we're exposed to all of those emotional, rational, physical things.
The Bible teaches that we're aliens. We're on loan. We're already been sealed and certified as our home is like stillness in heaven. And while we're in motion in this fiery inferno, Kanye is manipulating the masses, saying that God is the one who runs this earth. God is the one who rules the earth. The earth is run by Satan. The Bible teaches us that. Satan is the one who, so it's like the fallen angels, Satan, blah blah blah, yada yada. There's that energy and that entity that people can tap into, and a lot of that comes through scribes or people who channel.
Yeah. Well, the Lucifer, the light bringer type concept, I understand, and I think you're right. I go back to you go to, in the beginning, God said, let there be light. So the sound comes first, his voice, his song originated first, prior to there ever being light. So we can say all day long that, Satan rules this earth, but that's only because of the archetype, stereotype type manifestation of semantically labeling everything that we've done. That's
right.
All.
Exactly. And lightning, and the first description of Satan coming to earth, or Lucifer, is with lightning falling. And I remember Ben Davidson talking smack about the Thunderbolts group, possibly being into some weird stuff. And, Thunderbolts, Satan, a symbolism of Satan is lightning bolts, and it goes with electric music, rock and roll, lightning bolts. It's Led Zeppelin. It's
Flash
just
Gordon.
It's just one of the archetypes of Crowleyan type of Satanism.
See, I get confused. I get confused with that, buddy, because I believe the greatest gift is life. Is the material life. When that's a great gift, and yet here's all these references to how it's meant to not be. So, you know, we have in so many things where the greatest gift you have is your life at the present time, and it's what you do with your life that counts. So we shouldn't be concentrated on, did I sin? Well, if I haven't harmed somebody, how can I have? You understand where I'm coming from with it?
Yeah, I think that's why I get so frustrated with the
get
different
really
secret
confused
societies and different
frustrated with-
organizations. I get so frustrated with them because this simple concept and simple understanding has been what they have used and kept, you know, in their own private groups for so long. And I get it, man. I get it. I don't, you know, begrudge them necessarily. And I'm specifically talking about the Freemasons. But you cannot have a foundation of lies, half truths, and omitting information from the mass population, and then turning around at the same foot and saying you're responsible for your own actions. It's insane.
Yeah.
That's an insane hypocritical argument, and it drives me completely nuts to sit here and you know, and I get it. You know, these young guys today going into the different Freemason groups do it looking for brotherhood and some sort of connectivity to, you know, life, because it is a gift, like you're saying. I just have such an adverse taste in my mouth when it comes to the way that all of it has been used to funnel energies esoterically to benefit their different agendas or their different groups, instead of what it should be doing, which is, you know, in a more altruistic nature, helping humanity better themselves. It's, you know, it's like I get sick and tired of the nickel and diming. That's what I'm tired of.
Yeah. And like you said before, it's so easy, as that fella proved when he got everybody in an audience to draw a star.
That's my point. If it's so easy, why can't they do it for the good instead of this constant negative stream of energetic agendas?
Yeah.
That's what I have a problem with. If it's so easy, why don't they just do it in a good manner, in a positive light?
So a lot of these organisations, though, were created out of repression. You know, you go back your Freemasons and that. It was in a repressed time that they became, and they were underground, you know, so to survive. But what's happened is, as they've gained influence and no longer repressed, they've never then opened their whole system back up. Now, whether that's because they're scared of repression again, or whether that's because they now believe they have the power and they're going to keep it.
Well, and that goes to what, you know, Ramon talked about earlier about, you know, the specific direction and power of this group, in the sense of, we want the disruption of flat Earth, you know, being even discussed or brought up because it's over here versus over there, and then, you know, which one's going to produce results, etc. Or is it just going to be like Kanye, you know, slapping his hand in the water, creating disruption? You know, and I don't know the answer to that, but what I will say is there's what is right and doing the right thing, period. And anything else other than that is not. It's just that's how I see it.
Yep. The trouble with say Conrad is, at the end of it, the geopolitical power system is greater than he can be. You know, so he will get a movement with him, but then eventually something will happen. He'll fall off the perch.
And that's why I say that, you know, it's almost like there has to be some level of divine intervention that takes place across this planet, whether it's the flip-flop of the whole entire structure in terms of physically, you know, do we physically turn upside down and repeat the whole thing because that's the cycle that we're in? Or does, you know, mankind just stop putting up with the people that lie? Period. If you lie, you won't get ahead in this world. That's just as simple as that. And lies will not be tolerated, and therefore secret societies by default will no longer be activated, or not activated, but no longer have the juice that they've been able to maintain for so long and for such a, you know, prolonged period of time, because the heavens have dictated, based upon their energies that are currently hitting us here on the planet, that you no longer have the juice. So you're not going to be successful if you manipulate, if you lie, if you hold back truths. That the monetary system that they've utilized for so long, you know, the energetic flow, even from money, will no longer go towards people that have that propensity, because the energetic flow has changed. And then I think might be a slower process, but it's truly taken place in the past couple of years. That's for sure.
Oh, yes. And to see that, you've only got to look at, like, when you think about it today with some of what's gone on. When Nixon took the dollar off or the currencies basically of the world off the gold standard, but you got to say that was a stroke of genius, even if it's going to end up really bad.
How do you see that?
Well, what I mean is, at the time he did that, right, and connecting it to the oil trades, you got to say it was basically, he was in bind, and it was a stroke of genius how the administration of the US at the time was able to get everybody to go off the gold standard in a relatively quick time. And it was like what you said before with, what's the name, where the emperor every now and then just wipes off all of that. And that was really what he did at that time. And now we're seeing the opposite end of the scale, whereby you don't worry about the debt, we'll just give you more money in our system.
Yeah, I think one of the things I'll say is this AI chat, GPT chat, whatever it is, that has been put free use of the public for everybody just to use it for free. Within basically a 3 or 4 day period, it had over 1 million people sign up for it, and you start using it almost overnight. And the iPhone didn't even sell that fast. You know what I mean? So the reality is that it's something that's been in the works for a while, but individuals have been able to go through and create scripts that basically can go and monitor the stock exchange and provide them. This one guy put a video up on the TikTok crap showing, I did this. Look, this is how it's done. And many people are talking about it. He said, I got a 2,000% return in a very short amount of time. So it basically leaves, if you know how to use it, it'll leave the stock market completely obsolete. All the financial hedge fund groups, obsolete. Code writers, obsolete. HR representatives that have to, you have to have all these HR people, 15 people inside of your company for HR paperwork crap, obsolete now. You can generate these things almost automatically. So when that takes place,
So is that
what's more damaging?
Is that off the blockchain?
No,
is that off the blockchain?
It's just, I don't know what kind of information it's pulling from, but
yeah,
I don't think it's part of the blockchain yet. I think it's just the regular internet, www, whatever tree, whatever it is.
Well, kids are passing their exams. Kids are passing their exams with AI scripts.
Yeah, I mean, honestly, I mean, we're either one or two. Is it the repercussions or the fallout from this is not even close to being recognized because it's just started.
Yeah.
But you listen to Mike Rowe. Mike Rowe did that show Dirty Jobs. He's kind of like one of those guys that talks about the trades and
I listened to that show.
Yeah.
Who was he on with?
I don't remember exactly who the guy was interviewing him, but he said, listen, there are 11 million jobs right now in the United States that can't be fit, that won't be filled. They just can't fill them. And you look at, you ask, somebody on the left, and they'll tell you, well, it's because they don't pay enough, they're greedy. The individuals are just not paying enough money to justify the position. And you go to somebody on the other side of the fence, and they're like, well, they're just lazy. That's because people are just lazy. And if you sit there and he was saying, look, if you sit there with those two answers being the only way you can have a conversation, you'll never fix the problem. Because you got one side blaming the other side and the other side blaming the other side, and there's nobody able to have a conversation in the middle about how to truly fix the problem. And then you go listen to this other guy have a speech. He was sitting there talking about how the one problem we're facing in the Western world right now, more than any other problem, is that we cannot solve even one frickin' problem. We can't solve one problem. Not one. That's insanity. You know, not one problem can be solved. We can't fix anything. We can't solve anything. We have to debate it 16 different ways from Sunday. And then even whenever you have the debate, it's not an open debate. And there's always an agenda behind the individual having the debate in the first place, because he's beholden to one of the two sides that got him in that seat to be able to have the debate. And so we're faced with this constant energetic field of a confusion and quandary. But the Western world right now, we cannot solve even one problem, not one.
Because you could argue because we're not brutal enough to solve them anymore. Would that be part of it too? We're too busy looking after the so-called stakeholders instead of this is what we have to do and working out and how to do it.
Yeah, I think that's what that whole QAnon crap was all about. You know, they understood that in the United States we have, I don't know how many, 74 something million veterans, and you know, all of them have guns. You know, and in order to keep the majority of those individuals pacified, thinking that there's a savior, because they've already been programmed with the savior concept from, you know, the Bible and the religion. So you have the savior concept already ingrained from the childhood into your system programmatically. Then you have the QAnon conspiracy that comes out that makes you think, trust the plan, trust the plan. There's this group working to come save everybody. Don't worry, trust the plan, trust the plan. And, you know, it's still to this day, you know, you can still find them posting videos and talking about trust the plan. There's military tribunals taking place. We promise we're really going to go after these folks.
The plan is to destroy Christianity, Christians. They're the enemy, and if you look at it like that, it starts to make a lot more sense. And and to introduce a new spirituality, and that's exactly what is being played out.
Listen, I could see that. For me, I could see very clearly how the Vatican needs to go away.
They're grouping Christians with Trump. They're grouping Christians with flat earthers. They're grouping Christians with all the stuff that they're trying to with QAnon. And then they're trying to radicalize and call them terrorists.
Well, and you know, as far as the church itself,
buddy. Yeah, buddy. What are you determining that? See, I look at it as the Christian belief system of the basic rules of it. They're like cemented. But what I'm saying is you've got all these little groups now that are proclaiming to be Christian, and when you listen to some of their talkings, that's the total opposite to what I was taught when I was young. So, you know, they're all about now procuring this so-called wealth in money, you know, and they don't divest it either.
Yeah, and I get so frustrated.
And I see if there's a new religion, it won't be a new religion. It will be one of the other religions morphed in that will be.
Well, I mean, that's what took place during Constantine's time. You know, the King James Bible, they revised a lot there. They took out stuff and, you know, separated out. And basically you had Burger King versus McDonald's take place with the religions. But I think and then you had the Reformation take place. I mean, you had all of these movements that occurred throughout history when it came to religion. And we haven't had one in a very long while, any kind of, you know, Reformation or any kind of major overhaul of the religious aspect of this world, the output. But one of the things I'll say on your point, Andy, you know, you go through, you know, let's say Georgia, Alabama, any of these southern states, anywhere in the world really, but majority in the southern states, and you have, like, you go through these small towns, you know, I've done it myself, and you see church after church after church after church after church, and these people are poor. They don't have hardly a pot to piss in.
Because that's how That's how you build wealth in a community, is build a community center, and a community center is often the church. You build everything. You start everything in a community with a church. That's what we've been taught and programmed from colonialism. But it's true, and that's what holds small businesses and small towns and groups together. Is organizations like the Rotary organization, churches, and ethics. People working together, coming together, communing, singing. And then you teach from there. Schools come out.
But buddy,
I
that's
agree.
if
I
that's
just think,
divested
yeah, I
in
just
the
I
community
agree with
and the
Andy.
community.
that-
But now it gets concentrated to the one or two. That's
Yeah.
where the problem. What Donovan's trying to say is you got these poor people committing a lot of their time to these systems,
Yeah,
because they believe it will allow them to have a better life.
yeah,
But what they're contributing isn't necessarily coming back to them in their area to make their life better. It's getting funneled to a few, and they're doing very well out of those masses.
right.
That's what
And so
I
I
see.
can see what you're saying, buddy, that it comes down to the church itself, physically, the physical
And it keeps
body of
people-
the church.
It keeps people sane. It keeps a lot of people sane. It's the spot where you wash yourself. You go and it's like a bath. It's you go and you don't have to go to church to wash yourself and purify yourself or clean yourself. But there's you go, you cry, you sing songs, you communicate, you commune with people. I mean, what is now the question is what is going to replace that is the question. And Europe, I'm sure, I don't know what's happening in Europe, but just for an analogy real quick, Blockbuster's gone, Redbox is gone. Redbox killed Blockbuster and Netflix, and what's going to replace, religions replace religion, just like the American God series, like God stacked on top of God, stacked on top of God.
And again, it's a complicated issue, to be sure.
I think Jonathan would agree with me. For people, one of the greatest things people can do is just go up when they meet each other and give each other a hug. Now, but again, we've seen over the last 25 years especially, everything's so sexualized. And I have a look here on our weather stations on the news. They all have, nearly all of them have females, and at various times. And I say to Donna, I say, oh, the ratings must be low. Look at the low cut top she's wearing. Right. And you'll have a look at the ratings, and their ratings, and they'll come out, they drop. So they even sexualise the weather. It's just amazing.
Yeah.
Maybe
and it's distrust. It's sexual. If it's not sexualization, then it's distrust. So
maybe I've got a warped mind. Yeah, maybe I've got a warped mind and I look at it wrong.
Well, going back to Elon Musk's conversation with Joe Rogan, one of his first or second big ones that happened years ago. Elon Musk
smoked a doobie.
The one where he smoked a doobie. That one was iconic. Now, there was a lot of programming going on in that. The whole thing was programming. I disagreed with it with so much stuff going on. And one of the things that I noticed that went under the radar is that while he was trying to fearmonger everybody into being afraid of new ideas and AI, Elon Musk stated, "Oh, porn, they could care less about what you watch on porn. They're not looking at your porn habits. Like, are you kidding me? That's how you control people. Sex sells, sex controls. If you want to control someone and you see their sex type and their sex archetypes, you could get someone to come in as a spy and do anything, from any direction. So it's not, that's the easiest way to get into someone is actually by watching porn and stuff like that and their porn habits. Like, seriously? He said porn, they're not looking at our porn habits. They could care less about that. And then like the conversation went somewhere else. Bullshit.
Yeah, bullshit. Yeah. See, the key to that is just don't watch porn. That's the key and the answer. Just don't. I mean, absolutely stay. I mean, I completely stay away from that for years and years. It's just so low vibrational energy. It's bad.
It's a manipulating system because, and you'll see it on, you don't have to watch porn to see, you'll see it on regular shows that's on television now, whereby, so you go back years ago, the male courted the female. Now, so much of it is the female. It's like the praying mantis. The female's got to get the male and get what she wants, and then she just, right? And that's programmed on so many things now. Yeah, where it's the opposite to what it used to be, where the male had to court the female.
Yeah, if you look in nature, almost always it's the male courting the female. So, I mean, whether it goes either way, I don't really care. I think it's natural to go both ways. I think that we should be the ones attracting the attention to the females, which our beautiful bodies are. I mean, look at how muscular we are and hairy. We can change our look from day to day. And, whereas women have generally the same face, which, tends to pop up a little bit different on different days, depending on their cycles and stuff like that. But we're transformative. We're transformational. We're shapeshifters, where we can do all sorts of weird things women can't.
And all that is meant to have an emotional connection, where what they're doing now is destroying that emotional connection that's part of it.
Well, and that goes back to, I think, has a lot to do with, when you disrupt the family structure, the family unit, what do the individuals then go and look to as the answer? And it goes back to the state. The government becomes the parental figure inside of the home in all cases. And then as an individual, like if you're a child and you grow up without that structure, you are very much more susceptible to answering and being submissive to the state-run infrastructures that are available. It's just how it is, it's just a kind of a thing. So I think that's a lot of the motivation behind a lot of this disruption that's taken place in both the dynamic of the male and female roles, as well as the father figures in the house. All of these things are disruptive to the family unit, which there's strength in that. Because the individuals that come from these broken homes immediately, by default, a lot of times psychologically, default to the government as its paternal role. And that's been an agenda for a long time. And now I think we're seeing, I hope we're on the downward scale of that, or at least a downward trend in that regard.
I tend to feel it's going the other way. The state's getting more and more control. Because, they set up all these things and that so that you contract out the raising of children. And so I tend to think at the moment it's still going the opposite direction. Yeah. So, and that all ties in with what you were talking earlier. The energetic fields. Are we a pizza disc? I agree with you. I don't think we're around marble. We're probably more like an egg, and that's probably why one half of the Earth's got a lot more land than the other half. The other half's a lot more underwater because of that shape.
It might be the case.
North. Yeah, so if it tips up the other way one day, we'll get fat in the southern hemisphere. In the northern hemisphere will get wet.
Right. And you listen to Ben Davidson's talks and how he goes through things, and you're like, come on, man, is it really all that bad? But I don't know. I mean, you've got so many, squatting.
A lot of fear mongering.
Well, there is that, but you have so many representations of the squatting man on, multiple continents. What was that, And
I always remember my grandmother, Jonathan. I always remember my grandmother. She was in her early 90s at the time. This is going back in just be around, like the late 19th last century. And she was sitting there and she went through one night, she went through all the things that she considered were, the big things in her life, right? So out in this country here, it was still relatively raw, and how they'd done the planning, built all the water systems for the dams and all that, and how better that made this country. The electricity was one of the greatest things you ever got. Then, of course, there was the space, the man on the moon. Now, whether I know a lot of people say it never happened, but we'll leave it at that. Medical advancements, the motor car, all those things, and like she was saying, during my life, those changes have made life so much better for me. I've lived in a good time. And I'd say the same with us. Overall, for us living in the countries that we live in, overall, we've lived in a good time in history. But Ben might be right at some point, but that could be 1,000 years away. What Ben's talking possibly could happen. It could happen tomorrow. It could happen in 1,000 years' time. And I look at, I'm not going to worry about it,
Yeah, I think the ultimate thing that I was trying to say is that humanity was not intended to live underneath an oppressive concept of slavery here while it was here. That's the reality that we all are seeing, understanding, and feeling. We go back to the conversation I mentioned earlier with Mike Rowe. Nobody wants to work these jobs. It's because we were not intended to be slaves to any system here on this planet in any way, shape, or form. And because it has gone from your mom's time till now, it has progressed into complete and total systems of control, not systems of benefit. It has become systems of control because so much wealth has been funneled into the hands of so few. And they want to maintain that control. So by default, they have been controlling the system to ensure that that money goes to only them or the individuals that they see fit to have, certain portions or breadcrumbs to make sure that they maintain that control. And again, that goes back to why I get so frustrated with the secret societies and the Freemasons. It's because they have contributed to that systematic approach. They have been the enforcers of that system. Even if it's unknowingly, they have been. And so now we are all sitting here in the realization that the awareness, we've reached a point of awareness where we see these things for what they are. The veil has been lifted, the awakening, so to speak, though it has not reached the 100 monkey rule point, I don't think yet, where it becomes just a part of the etheric field. It's getting there. It will get there. But I think honestly, it's just the concept that I'm trying to, I think, portray is that, or at least I'm trying to express, is that humanity it's not God's intent for humans to be put on this planet and into this world underneath this oppressive, systematic levels of control and slavery, especially without our knowledge.
I don't think it can function. I'm sure it can function another way, but I think that as far as everyone's saying, it takes psychopaths to run it. It's the psychopathy. It's the people that can look the other way. It's the people that can hide, cover their eyes, close their mouth, see no evil, hear no evil, speak no evil, that advance to the top. And that's probably because of the lies of
previous generations. That's all. It's just lies of previous generations in order to maintain the level of control. That's it.
For the greater good. It's always for the greater good.
I don't want to hear it. I hear that phrase and I get so aggravated. For the greater good. For the greater good.
Right.
Like that just means the same exact thing that I said. It's just for the greater good. It's for your greater good, you bunch of controlling sycophants.
So,
sorry,
Jonathan and Buddy, what I was going to say is welcome back to the feudalism that we had prior to industrialization. That may be where we're as the energy systems that made us free are destroyed, we will come back in feudal type system where we have overlords, and nobody's going to be aware of it until, or the majority won't be aware of it until it happens to them.
Yeah, but you know what, man? I don't. You say that, and I hear you, and I agree. But it manifests itself in almost every aspect of even the corporate world.
No, Jonathan dropped off.
Oh, he dropped off.
And I've got to drop off too. So, buddy, I'll stop recording, and I'll drop off because this has been an all-nighter for me. So yeah, all right, I'll catch up. Yeah, I'll catch you again.
All right, cool. I'm
no worries.
The geometric view is love is watching product. Love is watching being. Thank you for doing that. Keep your eyeballs out. Pay attention. There's a lot going down this year. Be vigilant. Be mindful. Be insightful. Be loving. Thank you for being here. Thank you for being kind. Share the love. Spread the love. Become the love. Amen. Thank you for tuning in to episode 79, season 7. Hope you like what you hear. Always talking about new things. Looking forward to season 8. And have a good week. We'll talk to you guys soon. Love you all. Peace.
hope. So just hope. Just hope for the rhythm that you got. Cause you got the rhythm in the pop. The ball burst. The first, the thirst. Life is eternal, hope and thirsty. 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 Life is eternal, hope and thirsty.
Eyes all over the wall, eyes all over your body. Can I just see straight through with transparent golden scaling? The largest of the edifice embark on this because this is the journey. The journey is life. Take hold. Here we go. 3, 2, 1. Join us in the fight for Christ, in the fight to save lives. Surprise, submersible, so fast, the first, the last of baptism. Need to say more. Pay attention like the marrow in your bones, zero in your back, arrow in your lungs, zero into the back, tertiary Christian neuron, synapses and narrow endurance into eternity. I'm a courier, a charismatic attitude, meters even meter, it might even be fun. Cider indeed, need nerds, you need nerds, need a virtue, need to be a reason. Feasibility to be a reason to be clean and sober, keys, open doors, signs of directions. Be the carrier of candlesticks, the man that brought you change. Every second you ride, into it, the ribbon, you pivot, potential, you curve and cat. Could be cold, could be copycat, could be copy corpse, could be Schrodinger's best. Could be micro actor, Mackie normal, open-minded, itsy bitsy, freaking huge. A universal supermassive aspect of attached awareness. Aware of this all?
Collaborative consumption.
Are you aware of this all?
Collaborative consumption. The new thing consumption. Collaborative consumption. Consumption.
Get up now! Out of the boat! Drop! Where did this up? We don't got about it, girl. But about it, it's not about it, got us spirit. Get up, what's up? Shout out, top cross. Red planet on the middle, what's up? I'm in search of, I'm in earth love, I'm in living life, I'm in living color, I'm in air drop, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang, I'm in earth dang.
never give up, 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 never give up.